Chapter 857. Gu Lang returned to the outer palace to complete the civil and martial arenas duel, which was naturally seen by everyone. The veteran factions and the top factions' disciples who were participating in the civil and martial arena let out a sigh of relief when they saw Gu Lang. Gu Lang going to participate in the civil arena competition was a nightmare for the civil arena challengers, but it was a blessing for the civil and martial arena challengers. Lin Yuan looked at Gu Lang and said to himself, Long Tao should be coming out soon. During the chat, Long Tao had told Lin Yuan about his trump card as a creation master. It was a source-type life form, the bile dragon trilobite, that he had contracted since he was young. After devouring the gallbladders of dragon species phase, the bile dragon trilobite would secrete a kind of oil. This oil might not be able to increase the fusion rate of spiritual ingredients, but it could accelerate the formation of spirit liquid. It could be said that the bile dragon trilobite was a great help for speed competitions. Long Tao was now a pinnacle class 3 creation master, but he still could not be compared with Gu Lang with the bile dragon trilobite. It was obvious how powerful Gu Lang was among the creation masters. He was definitely at the standard of a class 4 creation master. He was going to compete with Zhongzhe as a creation master in a while, and this made him feel a trace of pressure. He knew that his standard as a creation master depended entirely on his physique. Even with genius help, he could not be compared with a class 4 creation master in many aspects. Therefore, he had to rely on his luck later. He wanted to see if he could rely on his luck to draw a question that he was good at. At that moment, Du Shua had already summoned his phase, a Diamond 7/Fantasy 2 Radium Uranium Sea Lion and a Diamond 3/Fantasy I Horned Dolphin. Du Shua obviously had contracted more than 2 phase. However, phase below Diamond/Fantasy breed would immediately be infected by the mycelium tapeworm's purple viscous fluid when they appeared on the battlefield, causing their bodies to be covered with mycelium. Lin Yuan used true data to check the radium uranium sea lion and horned dolphin's true data. He immediately knew why Du Shua had the courage to challenge Lu Jie. Du Shua had obviously used Starlight Jitan's pollen for the rolling grade. It was almost impossible for a spirit chi professional at Du Shua's age to reach A rank. The radium uranium sea lion was just like its name. It would usually devour some radium uranium steel, which even myth breed phase could only leave scars on. Then, it would take a long time to absorb the radium uranium steel and strengthen its own defense. The radium uranium sea lion might be a power offense type Fey, but its skin was covered with a thin layer of radium uranium steel, allowing it to possess superior defense compared to Feys of the same grade. He was more familiar with Du Shua's other contracted horned dolphin. If the horned dolphin that Du Shua contracted was lucky enough to advance to a mythical breed and awaken the ancient whale bloodline in its body, it would most likely evolve into a horned gray whale. Meanwhile, the princess's dress was engraved with 3 rules provided by the horned gray whale family. Among the 2 Feys that Du Shua had summoned, the Diamond 7/Fantasy 2 Radium Uranium Sea Lion was undoubtedly stronger than the Diamond 3/Fantasy I Horned Dolphin. However, if Du Shua wanted to challenge Lu Jie, he would be relying on the horned dolphin's special exclusive skill. Protection of water thought. By sacrificing the horn, the bloodline power within the horn will activate the water element to form a protective layer. This protective layer can protect the target from mental and soul attacks. When the horn disappears, the target will no longer be able to maintain the protective layer's function. With the horned dolphin's exclusive skill, water thought protection, Du Shua wouldn't have to worry about the dead soul caterpillar's terrifying threat. He would let the radium uranium sea lion, which had the strength to crush the insect swarm, clash head-on with the insect swarm. Just as Lin Yuan was checking the true data, Du Shua gave a loud order. Horned dolphin, use the exclusive skill, water thought protection. At Du Shua's order, the horned dolphin's body, which looked a little gray, suddenly turned dark blue. The giant horn in front of it also turned from blackish brown to reddish gold. Suddenly, 2 golden shields intertwined with 2 dark blue shields rose from the horns. One of the shields covered the radium uranium sea lion that was charging towards the swarm. The other shield covered the horned dolphin and Du Shua. The horned dolphin was fully activating its exclusive skill, water thought protection, while Du Shua began to command the radium-uranium sea lion to fight with its life on the line. At that moment, the orchid petal blade centipede, which was originally standing on Lu Jie's shoulder, fell into his palm like a fallen leaf. The dead soul caterpillar turned into a soul shadow and silently left the orchid petal blade centipede's body. It was unknown which blade worm or shield ladybug it had burrowed into. Lu Jie gently snapped his fingers and instructed the dimensional light moth. Dimensional light moth, spit out all the shield ladybugs in your stomach. Following Lu Jie's order, the dimensional light moth used blink wings to fly not far from the blade worms and shield ladybugs that were infected by mycelium and parasitized by the dead soul caterpillars. With each contraction of its abdomen, 10 shield ladybugs were spilled out. The dimensional light moth contracted its abdomen 10 times, and 100 shield ladybugs directly surrounded the radium-uranium sea lions with their flesh and blood, stopping the radium-uranium sea lions from advancing. Du Shua was stunned by the scene. He felt that Chief Guard Ye's disciples' method of controlling insect swarms was rather familiar. These goddamn shield ladybugs had already been summoned to a total of 135. Who could tell him where these shield ladybugs had come from? Lu Jie wasn't a creation master and didn't know the characteristics of the water thought protection. However, Lu Jie had already used the dead soul caterpillar to launch a sneak attack on the radium-uranium sea lion. This sneak attack hadn't been successful as it had been obstructed by the radium-uranium sea lion's protective layer. Lu Jie's expression couldn't help but darken. If the dead soul caterpillar's attack wasn't effective, he would have to summon even more insect-type carcinoma phase or even expose the insect queen in order to defeat Du Shua. However, Lu Jie, who had rich combat experience, keenly noticed that as the dead soul caterpillar attacked, a small area at the front of the horned dolphin's horn had turned into powder. Seeing this, Lu Jie revealed a smile behind his mask. Lu Jie circulated the spiritual power in his body and gave the final command to the insect swarm. Mycelium tapeworm, use double parasitism. Dead soul caterpillar, use soul tempering. Soul explosion death bullet. At Lu Jie's command, one of the blade worms in the swarm suddenly swelled up a little. The black mycelium on the surface of its body started to swim frantically, and at the same time, its body flickered with soul shadows. The mutated blade worm charged straight at the radium-uranium sea lion and suddenly self-destructed while fighting with it. Third. Finally, I'm almost done explaining Lu Jie's strength. I really like Lu Jie. Is it better for your style to be more warm or hot-blooded? Let's hear everyone's opinions. End of this chapter. Chapter 858. A large number of soul shadows crashed into the radium-uranium sea lion, but the radium-uranium sea lion did not seem to be affected by the soul shadows. At the same time, the horned dolphin let out a pained cry. Its golden horn suddenly lost 1/10 of its original length. Lu Jie didn't need to give the order to continue attacking. One after another, the blade worms went through the exact same sequence of events as before and crashed into the radium-uranium sea lions. The shield ladybugs that had surrounded the radium-uranium sea lion but were killed by the radium-uranium sea lion also stood up again. The series of self-destructing attacks did not give Du Shua any time to react. By the time Du Shua reacted, the horned dolphin's horn was only 1/10 of its original length. One more attack and the horn would be gone. Du Shua hurriedly shouted, "I surrender." The moment Du Shua shouted, the blade worms that were already in front of the radium-uranium sea lion stopped in their tracks. The war with the Zergs had come to an end. The Zergs' madness and sacrifice had secured another victory for Lu Jie in the martial arena. Du Shua was still thinking about Iron Prison's request to take him in as a disciple, but after fighting Lu Jie, he finally understood Lu Jie's strength. Du Shua no longer thought about the impossible request that he could fulfill. Du Shua recalled the horned pufferfish and the radium-uranium sea lion. He smiled at Lu Jie and gave him a thumbs up. "Young palace master, you're really strong." Lu Jie didn't answer. Instead, he looked down at his chest with a resolute expression. After Du Shua exited the martial ring, the 9 younger generation members of the top forces who were still standing below the martial ring also revealed relieved expressions. The battle between Du Shua and Lu Jie had taught the remaining 9 how weak they were. Therefore, the remaining 9 people decisively admitted defeat when they stepped onto the martial ring. Zhuo Ming looked at Lu Jie with a proud expression after the last person admitted defeat and left the arena. Zhuo Ming did not immediately announce that Lu Jie was the champion of the martial arena, but everyone present knew that the champion was the young man standing proudly among the Zergs. Regardless of whether it was the younger generation participating in the martial arena or the civil and martial arena, all of them came from veteran forces or top forces. Even among the veteran forces and peak forces, they were often the ones who received the most attention from the elders of their families. Outside, no matter where he went, he would be addressed as Lord, and was used to being fawned upon. However, at this moment, the invincible stance of the young man in the middle of the swarm was deeply imprinted in the hearts of the young generation of the top forces and veteran forces. At the same time, it also allowed the younger generation of the veteran and peak forces to understand what it meant to be a disciple of His Holiness. Night Leaning Moon, who was sitting on the 13th chair of Yiyang Palace, revealed a bright smile under her black veil. This bright smile on Night Leaning Moon's usually expressionless face was a bit abrupt, but this smile also perfectly expressed Night Leaning Moon's current mood. Even though Night Leaning Moon already knew of Lu Jie's strength, she was still happy that Lu Jie had become the champion of the martial arena. He was even happier than when he had won glory when he was young. The smile on Night Leaning Moon's face slowly disappeared as she turned to look at Iron Prison and said, "Iron Prison, after the Great Night Assembly ends, I will go to your place to retrieve the disaster insectoid hive's body." Iron Prison's face, which looked as if he was owed 2.5 million radiance dollars, did not change, but his heart was already bleeding. It was fine if he could not take in a disciple because of this bet. Losing the disaster insectoid hive's body to Night Leaning Moon was a bit of a headache, but it was not of much use to Iron Prison. Night Leaning Moon wanted the disaster insectoid hive's body for her disciple to use. After the death of the 6-star sacred source life form, the disaster insectoid hive's remnant parts were quite useful to the insectoid species tumor phase that Night Leaning Moon's disciple contracted. It could even allow the strength of her disciple's contracted insectoid species tumor phase to increase in a short period of time. If the disaster insectoid hive's body was said to be a little painful for Iron Prison, then the sacred source life form bet with the Moon Empress was completely cutting his flesh. Iron Prison usually stayed in the Imperial Court and led the Imperial Court Guards. Although Iron Prison controlled the powerful Imperial Court Guards, the Imperial Court Guards were still a part of the Imperial Court. This meant that Iron Prison did not have his own private faction, and he had fewer resources than the Moon Empress, Bamboo Monarch, Chef Supreme, Chief Guardier, and that old fellow from Ostrich Logistics. Now that he had just obtained a sacred source life form, it was snatched away by the Moon Empress before he could even warm it up. Iron Prison turned to look at the Moon Empress with a slightly suspicious look in his eyes. Iron Prison felt that the Moon Empress had been eyeing the sacred source life form in his hands for a long time. If that was the case, even without this bet, the Moon Empress would have thought of other ways to take the sacred source life form from him. Just as Iron Prison was thinking, he heard the Moon Empress' voice. "Iron Prison, thank you for letting me win. Help me personally deliver the sacred source life form I won to the Radiant Moon Palace after the Great Night Meet," Luo Yunyang said. Upon hearing the Moon Empress' words, Iron Prison's brows immediately furrowed. It was fine that he had lost the sacred source life form. But the Moon Empress wanted him to personally deliver the sacred source life form to the Radiant Moon Palace. She was simply too much. Just as Iron Prison was about to refuse, the Moon Empress turned to look at him with a complicated expression. "After you deliver the sacred source life form to the Radiant Moon Palace, I will help you take a look at the 2 phases that are stuck at the boundary. However, you will have to prepare the boundary creation crystal yourself." With that, the Moon Empress turned her head and no longer looked at Iron Prison. The Moon Empress' words made Iron Prison's furrowed brows immediately relax, and an incredulous look of surprise appeared on his face. The surprised expression made Iron Prison's face look much gentler. Iron Prison was the commander of the Imperial Court Guards, so he was used to seeing the world. However, at this moment, Iron Prison only felt that he had countless little question marks as if he was living in a dream. Since when did the Moon Empress take the initiative to give me benefits? Could the Moon Empress be an imposter? 8 years ago, he had personally gone to look for the Moon Empress with the boundary creation crystal in hopes of asking her to help his two-phase break through the boundary. However, when he had climbed up the leaning moon mountain step by step with sincerity and arrived at the radiant moon palace's entrance, he had been greeted by 4 moonlight chains. The moonlight chains were very sharp and did not even give him a chance to speak before being chased off the leaning moon mountain. The first time was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 859. Iron Prison's heart was still aching, and he was not happy that the Moon Empress had won his sacred source life form. However, he remembered that the Moon Empress wanted to help him look at the phase and asked him to prepare the creation crystal. This meant that the Moon Empress planned to help his two-phase break through that boundary. Compared to the increase in his strength, an uncontracted sacred source life form was not that important in Iron Prison's heart. Iron Prison's feelings toward the Moon Empress became somewhat complicated, but he was already grateful to her. Behind the phone on the chair in the middle of the 13 seats was an old man sitting on a recliner in the imperial court. When the old man heard the Moon Empress' words, his calm face revealed a surprised expression, which then turned into gratification. Zhao Siya, who had stopped being a Radiance envoy and still did things her own way, finally started to consider other people's feelings after becoming a master. The old man had never seen the Moon Empress disciple, but he had heard Cicada Cry mention that the disciple was called Lin Yuan. He also knew which one of the Night Dawn Palace Outer Palace Lin Yuan was. The old man looked at Lin Yuan and was a little curious about what kind of magic this young man had. He was actually able to subtly influence the Moon Empress' character and temper. At that moment, the Night Dawn Palace Inner Palace's veteran factions and the top factions management generation all looked a little disappointed. The martial arena had ended, and Chief Guard Knight's disciple had obtained first place. Her Majesty had always kept her word, which meant that Iron Prison could not possibly accept a disciple in the Night Assembly. Thinking of this, the veteran factions and the top factions management generation looked at Gao Pei with some anger. With Night Leaning Moon's praise, the Moon Empress' recommendation, and Cicada Cry's own words about being fated with Gao Feng, Gao Pei's son, Gao Feng, being accepted as Cicada Cry's disciple was basically a done deal. At that moment, a surprised voice suddenly echoed from the Night Dawn Palace Outer Palace. Yay! I, Gao Feng, am actually second place in the martial arena. After hearing Gao Feng's voice, the challengers who chose to concede in the martial arena looked at each other. These challengers had no intention of congratulating Gao Feng at all. They only felt that Gao Feng had gotten lucky. When Wang An, who was fighting Gao Feng, heard Gao Feng's voice, he almost could not help but reach out to slap himself. At that time, if he hadn't wanted to show off his strength, the second place in the martial ring would have been his. At this time, the Right Minister, Yu Zhe, was striding out of the civil arena examination area. Behind him was Long Tao and an extremely ordinary-looking woman. The woman looked about 24 or 25 years old, about the same age as Long Tao. The woman was also holding a thick book in her hand. Coupled with her calm expression, she looked like a bookworm who had studied too much. However, no one dared to look down on this ordinary-looking woman. At this moment, this woman and Long Tao were following behind the Right Minister, Yu Zhe, as they left the literary arena. This meant that this ordinary-looking woman and Long Tao had already answered the questions and passed the literary arena. In addition to Gu Lang, who had already returned to the outer palace of the Yeyang Palace, there were now 3 people who had passed the written competition. This meant that the one arena competition was already over. However, it was unknown whether Long Tao or this extremely ordinary-looking girl was in second place or third place in the literary arena. After Yu Zhe led Long Tao and the ordinary-looking woman through the long hallway, the disciples of the top forces and veteran forces who did not complete the questions also left the literary arena dejectedly. After the written competition was over, the challengers who had yet to complete the questions lost the chance to continue in the Yeyang Palace's cultivation room. Long Tao passed through the hallway and arrived at the outer palace. He immediately saw Gu Lang, who was standing next to Zhong Zhe and talking cheerfully. Long Tao's expression changed slightly when he saw Gu Lang, but he did not look surprised at all. Long Tao had already expected that Gu Lang would come out before him. However, at this moment, Long Tao desperately wanted to know when Gu Lang would finish the written questions. He wanted to measure the difference between him and Gu Lang. Yuzha brought Long Tao and the ordinary-looking woman back to the outer palace. Then, he turned around and walked to Zhuo Ming. Zhuo Ming and Yuzha were only responsible for presiding over the written and martial arenas. Zhuo Ming and Yuzha didn't need to announce the rankings for the written and martial arenas. When the Nix assembly officially began, the challengers who obtained the rankings would naturally be bestowed with honor, and they would be personally awarded by the chief guard. Just as this ordinary-looking woman was about to find an empty corner to sit down and flip through the thick book in her hand, her wrist was suddenly grabbed by Long Tao. This ordinary-looking woman's face revealed a trace of confusion as she looked at Long Tao with a puzzled expression. However, she stopped in her tracks and gracefully stood next to Long Tao. Although the woman did not say anything, the expression on her face was obviously asking Long Tao why he stopped her. Gao Feng, who was standing next to Lin Yuan, was excitedly waiting for Long Tao so that he could ask Long Tao what the questions for the written arena were. The written and martial arenas assessment method was the same as the written and martial arenas assessment method. The written and martial arenas assessment method could be considered a combination of the written and martial arenas assessment method. Since Lin Yuan was going to participate in the written and martial arenas assessment method, it would be better to ask Long Tao what the written arenas assessment method was so that Lin Yuan would have an idea. However, Gao Feng didn't expect to see Long Tao holding a woman's wrist in public. Lin Yuan, do you think Long Tao has taken a fancy to that woman who came out with him? Upon hearing Gao Feng's words, Lin Yuan reached out to touch the hair on the back of his head and didn't know how to answer for a moment. When Li Xian, who didn't have much of a presence beside Lin Yuan, heard Gao Feng's words, he couldn't help but cough violently. After coughing for a while, he said, "Don't worry, Long Tao can't possibly have taken a fancy to her." Li Xian's words were as sharp as steel. As Long Tao's childhood, little Li Xian simply understood Long Tao too well. Long Tao had always been a veteran beauty complex since he was young. When he was young, he was a little fatty. When he was 6 years old and slimmed down, his appearance started to reach the standard. It was also at that time that Long Tao started to play with him. Long Tao was already so harsh on the appearance of boys, let alone girls. Furthermore, even if Long Tao changed his aesthetics and stopped being a beauty complex, given Long Tao's steadiness, it was impossible for him to talk about matters of the heart. Thus, Long Tao's actions must have some other objective. Li Xian faintly felt that he had already guessed what Long Tao's objective was. When Gao Feng heard Li Xian's sharp answer, he looked at Li Xian with a suspicious expression and thought to himself. Li Xian couldn't be jealous, right? The second part was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 860. Before Gao Feng could think any further, Li Xian spoke again. From the emblem on this woman's clothes, she should be from the Veteran Spirit Healer Medical Center. The Spirit Healer Medical Center will be blessed in the future. The Spirit Healer Medical Center was a veteran faction that relied on creation masters, but they didn't do the business of nurturing phase. In terms of creation masters, the Spirit Healer Medical Center mainly focused on healing phase with damaged roots. It could be said that the Spirit Healer Medical Center's creation masters had chosen a good direction and had great potential. But as the Spirit Healer Medical Center didn't have a pinnacle class 4 creation master, high-class creation masters didn't have much of an advantage compared to other veteran factions. As a result, the Spirit Healer Medical Center hadn't developed or improved for nearly 20 years. It had been a few decades since Li Yun Avian Domain had become an elite faction. After becoming an elite faction, Li Yun Avian Domain and the Coiling Dragon Valley depended on each other and didn't need the Coiling Dragon Valley's protection anymore. This allowed the Coiling Dragon Valley to choose a new veteran faction to support. This woman's creation master's strength made Long Tao recognize the potential of the veteran Spirit Healer Medical Center. As expected, Long Tao extended an invitation to the woman in front of him. I would like to represent the Coiling Dragon Valley to officially extend an invitation to the Spirit Healer Medical Center. I wish to have an in-depth exchange with the Spirit Healer Medical Center and help it develop quickly. Long Tao didn't lower his voice when he spoke, and only the woman in front of him could hear his words clearly. Even the majority of the younger generation from the veteran factions in the Night Peak Palace had heard it. The veteran faction disciples looked at the ordinary-looking woman with envious eyes. Long Tao was doing this to declare his sovereignty and clearly express the Coiling Dragon Valley's intention to support the veteran Spirit Healer Medical Center. After hearing Long Tao's words, the woman's eyes flickered. But when she thought of her status, she didn't immediately agree to Long Tao's words. The woman knew Long Tao. Even if Long Tao wasn't the Coiling Dragon Valley's young family head, just the fact that he was Sequence 3 of the Radiance 100 was enough for everyone to know. As the only direct descendant of the younger generation, Long Tao could represent the Coiling Dragon Valley as he wished. However, the woman knew that she had plenty of brothers and sisters in the Spirit Healer Medical Center. She had only been brought to participate in the Dark Knight Conference because of her Creation Master talent. She wanted to see if a Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master would like her talent and accept her as a disciple. But now, he had used his talent to attract the support of a peak power, Coiling Dragon Valley. This was definitely better than finding a Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master as a master. The woman's face couldn't help but reveal an excited expression, making her ordinary face look even more beautiful. I need to talk to the elders in my family about this. They are all in the inner palace of Yeung Palace. I wonder if it's possible to have the elders of my family meet with you directly after the Nix assembly to discuss your suggestion just now. Long Tao said with a smile. Then leave me your phone number first. This time, the representative of Coiled Dragon Valley is my father. I'll contact you again after the meeting. After exchanging phone numbers with the woman, Long Tao walked toward Lin Yuan. Long Tao had used the source-type life form, the Bile-Dragon Trilobite, that he had contracted since he was young. It had also allowed the Bile-Dragon Trilobite to devour the secretion of the main dragon species Phase Heart. It could be said that it had reached its maximum speed. Although everyone had drawn different questions, Long Tao, who had finished the questions at his fastest speed, had just stepped out of the breeding room to confirm his second place when he saw the girl following him out of the breeding room. No matter what trump card the lady used, it was enough to prove her talent as a creation master. With such talent, Long Tao naturally wanted to pull him into his camp. Through this method of supporting a veteran force with potential, he could increase the overall strength of the Coiling Dragon Valley. Long Tao, who was beside Lin Yuan, hurriedly asked. Brother, how long did that person take to complete the theory competition? Lin Yuan knew that Long Tao would ask him this question, so he had accurately recorded the time when Gu Lang had just returned to the outer palace. Gu Lang's time to complete the martial arts competition was 24 minutes and 36 seconds. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Long Tao revealed a shocked expression. Using 47 minutes and 12 seconds was already his limit, and he had used half a main dragon species Phase Heart to achieve this speed. According to the time, even if Gu Lang didn't take half of the time he used to finish the exam, it would be almost the same. This made Long Tao feel like he had suffered a deep blow. Although obtaining second place in the literary arena was a delightful matter, his second place result couldn't even be seen in the dust raised by the first place result. Long Tao didn't know how powerful Lin Yuan's creation master's strength was, but he knew that Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple. Not only was Lin Yuan not weak as a creation master, but he also had his own trump card. Long Tao said in a deep voice when he recalled that Lin Yuan was going to participate in the civil and martial arena duels. Brother, the questions for the civil arena are drawn from the beast-headed bronze statues in front of the breeding room. After drawing the questions, you will have to hand over the prepared spirit fluid in the face storage box under the right governor's inspection. Only then can you enter the breeding room to check your questions. You will then inform the spirit guard waiting in the breeding room about the content of the test. You will also need to request for the spirit guard to prepare the materials. My test is to upgrade 3 gold level 10 coldwater white crocodiles to the platinum level. Upon hearing Long Tao's words, Lin Yuan immediately understood the difficulty of the literary arena's questions. It wasn't difficult for ordinary Class 3 creation masters to upgrade gold phase to platinum, but the test results were determined by the length of time. If Lin Yuan had drawn this test and genius had concocted the spirit fluid, a single portion of high-grade Class 3 Cold Lake Elixir would be able to upgrade 3 pinnacle gold coldwater white crocodiles to platinum. However, even if genius used the Golden Lotus Brocade, it would still require at least 2 hours to complete a bottle of Cold Lake Elixir. Even if Lin Yuan used Spirit Chi crystals to upgrade 1 Gold X Coldwater White Crocodile to platinum, he would need to use 10 Spirit Chi crystals. A total of 3 would be 30 Spirit Chi crystals, and Lin Yuan didn't have more than 30 Spirit Chi crystals on hand. Therefore, Lin Yuan, who had drawn such a question, could just give up. At that moment, the right governor, Yu Zhe, spoke up. Since the civil and martial arena duels have officially ended, the civil and martial arena duels shall begin now. Chapter 3. It's Chapter 60 again. If anyone has any opinions, you can say them at the end of this chapter. Button will listen to everyone's opinions. Good night, pray that the surgery on the 15th will be successful. I also wish my friends who are taking the college entrance exam to get a good result. End of this chapter. Chapter 861. Hearing Right Minister Yu Zhe's words, Zhongzhe, who had just seen Lu Jie's killing spree on the martial arena, immediately rushed to Yu Zhe's back. Zhongzhe's actions caused the challengers who were originally participating in the civil and martial arena to reveal a trace of timidity. The left minister, Zhuo Ming, cleared his throat and said, "Previously, I only announced that the prize for first place in the civil and martial duel arena is a sacred source life form and a radiant light medal. I didn't announce the prizes for second and third place. I will now announce that the reward for the second place of the civil and martial arena is a chance to nurture a fae provided by the Chef Supreme. This opportunity can be to nurture a specific bronze/legend fae or to prepare spiritual ingredients and ask Lord Bamboo Monarch to help the fae break through." Hearing Zhuo Ming's announcement of the prize for the second place in the civil and martial arena, it wasn't just Yiyang Palace's outer palace's veteran forces and the top force's younger generation that were breathing heavily. Even the leaders of the Yiyang Palace couldn't help but gasp for breath. Although the reward for the second place in the civil and martial arena was not as good as the reward for the first place, it was equivalent to giving his faction a future. Zhuo Ming's voice sounded again before the crowd could sigh over the prize for the second place in the cultural relic double arena. The reward for the third place of the civil and martial duels is 100 drops of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar provided by the Moon Empress. Among the 100 drops of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar, 90 drops can cleanse the impurities on the physical body, while 10 drops can cleanse the impurities on the soul spirit. Zhuo Ming's words shocked the crowd once again. It was rumored that the Moon Empress silver stamen gold luster cassia had undergone a transformation, and these 10 drops of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar that could wash away the impurities in one's soul should have come from the transformed silver stamen gold luster cassia. Washing away the impurities in one's soul could increase one's understanding of the will of heaven and earth. On the other hand, it could improve the purity of one's soul. The purity of the soul was a prerequisite for contracting a sacred source life form. Forming a contract with a sacred source life form without a sufficiently pure spirit was very dangerous. When Lin Yuan heard about the reward for the third place of the civil and martial duels, he couldn't help but raise his brows. He didn't expect that the reward for the third place of the civil and martial duels would actually be provided by his master, the Moon Empress. Lin Yuan rubbed his chin awkwardly when he saw everyone else's longing expression when they heard about the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar. Sometimes, if one bowl wasn't enough, he would drink 2. Yu Zhe said after Zhuo Ming announced the rewards for both the civil and military arenas. The assessment method for the civil and martial duels is the same as the civil and martial duels. However, the final ranking for the civil and martial duels is different. In a while, no matter how many people participate in the civil and martial arena competition, in the end, only the top 3 of the civil and martial arena competition will be chosen. The third place in the civil and military arena competition will be the third place in the civil and military arena competition. The top 2 in the civil and martial arena will compete in the civil and martial arena. The first and second place will be decided according to the results of the martial arena. Yuja's words caused the younger generation of the top powers and veteran powers who were preparing to participate in the civil and martial arena to shiver. Except for people like Long Tao, who had enough strength, but chose to give up participating in the civil and martial arena and participate in the civil arena after weighing the pros and cons. The vast majority of challengers who were preparing to participate in both the civil and martial arenas were much more outstanding than those who were only participating in the civil or martial arenas. As long as a creation master was talented enough in a combat class spirit chi occupation, they would have the potential to comprehend a willpower rune. Then, in terms of combat, they would have an advantage that ordinary combat class spirit chi professionals couldn't compare with. During the process of combat, creation masters could use the creation master's abilities to carry out the most basic detection and consideration of the opponent's summon phase. The creation master's ability to detect phase was far inferior to Morbius' true data. However, before the battle started, the creation masters would still be able to take a step ahead to control the situation. However, the rules of the civil and martial arenas were truly unexpected. In the beginning, many people had guessed that the civil and martial arenas would use a points system. It might be a little troublesome, but it would allow for a more comprehensive selection of the creation masters with the strongest combat strength. However, the rules of the civil and martial arenas were too simple and crude. It could be said that the top 3 of the civil and martial arenas would basically be decided by the civil and martial arenas. Only the 2 strongest individuals in the civil and martial arenas would be qualified to participate in the civil and martial arenas. Even if creation masters' strength had always been valued more than their combat strength, there was no need to be so biased, right? The third place of the civil and martial arenas would only have to go through the civil and martial arenas and wouldn't need to fight. Such a competition method made many of the challengers who had participated in the civil and martial arenas feel that they had chosen the wrong arena. If they had known the rules of the civil and martial arenas, they would have participated in the civil and martial arenas no matter what. However, Long Tao, who had chosen the civil and martial arenas, didn't regret it. Long Tao understood that obtaining the second place of the civil and martial arenas was already the best outcome. If he had known the rules of the civil and martial arenas, he would have participated in the civil and martial arenas. Then, the Bamboo Monarch's disciple, Gu Lang, might not have chosen the civil and martial arenas and would instead participate in the civil and martial arenas. Gu Lang, Zhong Zhe, and Lin Yuan, the 3 Class 5 Creation Masters' disciples, were basically the top 3 of the civil and martial arenas. The others didn't even have a chance. On the other hand, if Gu Lang participated in the cultural relic arenas, then he would be the champion of the civil and martial arenas. When thinking about it, Long Tao couldn't help but feel that his big chestnut was a little painful. The harsh rules of the civil and martial arenas were already causing people to involuntarily shrink back. In addition, before the rules of the civil and martial arenas were announced, Zhong Zhe had already walked behind Zhou Ming and indicated that he would participate in the civil and martial arenas. For a moment, the challengers who were originally going to participate in the civil and martial arenas were filled with pessimism. Especially those creation masters with weaker abilities and challengers with stronger combat strength. Their pessimism was even more obvious. The rules of the civil and martial arenas could be said to have killed the challengers' chances. Therefore, even after a few minutes, no one walked behind Zhou Ming and reported to participate in the civil and martial arenas. It caused the situation to fall into an awkward situation. The cell phone that was placed on the chair in the center of the Night Palace's inner palace echoed again with a neutral and calm voice. The civil and martial arenas allowed this old man to see the talents and combat strength of the younger generation's creation masters. Our Radiant sect's younger generation is really getting stronger. The younger generation will surpass us in time. But why can't this old man see any courage when the civil and martial arenas have just started? At this point, the neutral and calm voice did not continue speaking. The first one was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 862. Upon hearing the old man's voice, the expressions of the other 12 abyssals did not change. However, the leaders of the veteran factions and the top factions behind the 13 seats could not sit still. These leaders also felt that the rules of the civil and martial duels were too fucked up. However, the next moment, whoever stood up first and walked towards Zhuo Ming would be imprinted with a mark of courage because of the old man's words. The calm voice on the old man's cell phone said to the Moon Empress, you still haven't seen your disciple? Upon hearing that, the Moon Empress rolled her eyes imperceptibly. When she heard that, the Moon Empress rolled her eyes imperceptibly. What does it have to do with you whether this Empress disciple comes out or not? In the Moon Empress' heart, Lin Yuan was not inferior to the others, but he was too young. Moreover, the Moon Empress did not intend to let Lin Yuan participate in these 3 duels. Just as the Moon Empress was about to answer, she suddenly froze. The Moon Empress realized that her precious disciple had actually made a move. Lin Yuan, who was in the crowd, took a deep breath and thought to himself. The rules of the civil and martial duels imperceptibly reflect the importance of a creation master's strength. In any case, he had to participate in the civil and martial duels. Not only for the sacred source life form, but also for the radiant light metal. When Lin Yuan had been preparing to participate in the Radiance 100 sequence selection, he had not been strong enough. At that time, Lin Yuan had just obtained a Silver Eye/Fantasy Eye Jasmine Lily. At that time, his master, the Moon Empress, had already mentioned the Radiance Envoy to him. When Lin Yuan had first heard of the Radiance Envoy, it had left a deep impression in his heart. As Lin Yuan's strength continued to increase, he could now pass the Radiance 100 sequence test with his eyes closed and become a member of the Radiance 100 sequence. Therefore, Lin Yuan's eyes were now fixed on the Radiance Envoy. The radiant light metal from the civil and martial duels was a very useful help for him on his path to becoming a Radiance Envoy. Lin Yuan nodded at Lu Jia, Long Tao, Gao Feng, Li Xian, Sun Ningxiang, and the others before walking directly behind Zhuo Ming. Apart from the people in Lin Yuan's small group who knew that Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple, they only knew that the chief guard's disciple was exceptionally protective of this youth. Upon seeing that Lin Yuan was going to participate in the civil and martial arena duels, the veteran factions and the top factions' younger generation members were astonished. Most of the people present had watched the all-star competition and knew of Lin Yuan's talent in combat. However, due to the rules of the civil and martial duel arenas that had just been announced, it could be said that the entire competition basically had nothing to do with combat ability. Unless he was able to place in the top 2 of the civil arena competition, there was no chance for him to display his combat strength. Moreover, the people present were not trash like Meng Su from the Barbarian Snake Guild Club. Aside from Gao Feng, who had gotten lucky, anyone else would have been able to defeat Meng Su within 3 moves. Therefore, he had always been favored by the younger generation of the top factions and veteran factions because of his talent and not his strength. Lin Yuan had just turned 18 after the new year. In addition, Lin Yuan looked rather young, so everyone felt that he was like a 16 or 17-year-old youth. Even if he had grasped the Creation Master's means in his mother's womb, his strength as a Creation Master couldn't possibly be that strong, right? Apart from talent, a Creation Master's accumulation of time was also indispensable. After all, not all Creation Masters were like the Moon Empress, who was already a 5-star Creation Master before the age of 40. When the challengers who were preparing to participate in the civil and martial arena duels saw Lin Yuan casually standing behind Zhong Zhe, they couldn't help but feel that this youth wasn't a genius like the Moon Empress. For a moment, they couldn't help but feel that this youth wasn't thinking that he would be able to get second place in the civil and martial arena duels just because no one had stepped up earlier. Don't even think about it. Therefore, many challengers also stepped forward and lined up behind Lin Yuan. The Moon Empress didn't expect Lin Yuan to have the courage to participate in the civil and martial arena duels. However, this was also good. On the one hand, Lin Yuan could compete with the other outstanding youths. On the other hand, as his master, she could also know Lin Yuan's strength. At that moment, the Bamboo Monarch, Chef Supreme, Night Leaning Moon, Iron Prison, and Cicada Cry couldn't help but look at the Moon Empress. These 5 people had seen Lin Yuan before. Among them, the Bamboo Monarch, Cicada Cry, and Iron Prison looked at the Moon Empress and then at Chef Supreme with a playful expression. They didn't expect the Moon Empress disciple to compete with Chef Supreme's disciple. They didn't know who was stronger. At that moment, there was an exclamation. Isn't that little Yuan? It was a woman's voice that sounded a little shrewish. Then, a man's voice echoed. Ying, it's really little Yuan. This kid actually went to participate in the civil and martial arena duels. After the Nix assembly ends, I can call little Yuan over to Kitchen Fragrance Palace to try my new red braised meat. Zhang Yingying and Li Zhonglin had been chatting with Wang Fuxiang and hadn't paid much attention to the martial arena duels. When they heard Zhongzheng's voice mention the civil and martial arena duels, they subconsciously looked forward. They didn't expect to see Lin Yuan. Upon hearing Li Zhonglin and Zhang Yingying's words, the veteran factions and the top factions management generation suddenly looked at Chef Supreme. It turned out that the youth who had amazed everyone at the All-Star competition was related to Chef Supreme, and it seemed like their relationship was very deep. From Li Zhonglin and Zhang Yingying's tone, they had directly treated this youth as their junior. Chef Supreme's eldest disciple, Li Zhonglin, had never given face to anyone, but now, he actually took the initiative to cook red braised meat for a youth. This was really big news. Although the veteran faction's management generation behind the 13 seats didn't dare to be as surprised as Li Zhonglin and Zhang Yingying in front of the 13 majesties, they could still talk normally. There were even quite a number of top factions and veteran factions management generation that started a few bets while watching the martial arena duels, betting on how many consecutive wins Lu Jia could win. At that moment, the management generation started to discuss Lin Yuan's identity softly. These discussions naturally entered the Moon Empress' ears, and she felt a nameless fire burning in her body. Lin Yuan is this Empress disciple. Chef Supreme's eldest disciple and daughter just happened to become this Empress disciple's neighbor when they eloped. You actually placed this Empress disciple on Chef Supreme's side, and you didn't even ask Chef Supreme if he dared to accept her. Standing behind the Moon Empress, Mystic Moon and Mystic Moon couldn't help but have cold sweat trickle down their foreheads. Based on their understanding of the Moon Empress, it was impossible for the Moon Empress to remain calm when it came to matters related to Lin Yuan. The second, end of this chapter. Chapter 863. At that moment, Thunderous Battle, who represented the 5 Emperors' mercenary group, spoke to Long Tu, who was standing beside him. Old Long, look at that young man. He's at most 17 or 18 years old. Let's make a bet on whether that young man can enter the top 10 of the civil and martial duels. Long Tu quickly glanced at the Moon Empress and cursed Thunderous Battle in his heart for being crazy. Thunderous Battle was the second in command among the 5 Emperor-class experts of the 5 Emperors' mercenary group. He was extremely strong in combat, but he was careless and lacked shrewdness. However, under normal circumstances, shrewd people would not dare to trick Thunderous Battle. Based on Thunderous Battle's question, Long Tu knew that Thunderous Battle had not paid attention to the rules of the civil and martial duels. The civil and martial duels were over once the top 3 contestants were confirmed. There was no such thing as the top 10. Do you think Thunderous Battle can rank the top 4 to 10? Moreover, there are only 11 people from the younger generation standing behind Zhuo Ming. You're betting on whether the Moon Empress disciple can enter the top 10. Isn't that the same as betting on whether the Moon Empress disciple will rank last? Before Lanta could finish cursing Thunderous Battle in his heart, an imposing aura suddenly rose from a chair in front of him. The moment this aura rose, Long Tu, who was an Emperor-class expert, felt as though his entire body was being pressed into the depths of the sea. He could not breathe at all. Thunderous Battle, who was beside Long Tu, felt as though he was an Emperor-class expert. When he tried to circulate the spiritual power in his body, he felt that it was extremely obscure. After careful calculation, it was only about 1/10 of the usual speed. This shocked Thunderous Battle. It could be said that the might of this aura had exceeded Thunderous Battle's understanding. At that moment, a cold snort sounded in Thunderous Battle's ears. That snort might not have been loud, but Thunderous Battle felt that half of his ear had gone numb because of the sound of it. Do you like to gamble so much because you can take out a sacred source life form? If you want to gamble, let this Empress accompany you. Upon hearing this voice, Thunderous Battle immediately knew that the terrifying aura had come from the Moon Empress. Thunderous Battle grinned awkwardly. He did not know how he had offended the Moon Empress. He had come to the Imperial City with a mission. He was going to head up to the Leaning Moon Mountain to seek the Moon Empress' help. Furthermore, he wanted to see if he could exchange for a few golden lotus brocade stalks from the Moon Empress. The 5 Emperors' mercenary group's creation master resources were already scarce. If they could obtain a few golden lotus brocade plants, it would allow the 5 Emperors' mercenary group to have more creation master resources. However, for some unknown reason, he had offended the Moon Empress. Even though he was an Emperor-level expert, Thunderous Battle did not dare to put on airs. He quickly bowed and spoke respectfully. I'm not betting anymore. Moon Empress, I, Thunderous Battle, am not betting anymore. Once he finished speaking, he added another sentence. Actually, I don't usually gamble. Another cold snort shook Thunderous Battle's other ear until it was numb. Then, the Moon Empress retracted her terrifying aura. The Moon Empress' sudden rage silenced the entire Night Emperor Palace. Night Leaning Moon also turned her head around to cast a glance at Thunderous Battle. She felt that Thunderous Battle was practically the boss of the desert. Originally, he wanted to find 2 spicy strips to eat, but he accidentally entered the crater of the volcano. Zhuo Ming looked at the 11 Lives challenger behind him and asked in a clear voice. Is there anyone else who is going to participate in the civil and martial duels? After asking the question, Zhuo Ming saw that no one else came forward, so he turned and walked toward the civil and martial duel area. Lin Yuan followed behind Zhuo Ming. When he thought about how he would have to rely on luck to draw a question that he was good at, he felt a headache. He didn't like the feeling of having to rely on luck when doing things. Suddenly, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. He might not have the mystical spiritual ingredient that could increase his luck, but he had the astrologer Ji Tan that could eliminate bad luck. Even if he didn't have the luck bonus, he must not be affected by bad luck. The astrologer Ji Tan was constantly growing in the spirit lock spatial zone. During the past dozen days, the astrologer Ji Tan had already bloomed for the 2nd time. Lin Yuan had collected all the pollen left behind by the astrologer Ji Tan's first bloom. Lin Yuan shook his hand and took out a brocade box. This brocade box contained the pollen that the astrologer Ji Tan had condensed for the first bloom. If the astrologer Ji Tan's pollen wanted to eliminate the bad luck in his body, he would need to swallow the pollen with his mouth. Therefore, Lin Yuan casually used his hand to pick up a small pinch of the pollen and put it in his mouth. At that moment, Zhongzhe, who was walking in front of Lin Yuan, paused slightly, and he forcefully sniffed. He felt that there was a very faint fragrance in the air. Zhongzhe realized that this fragrance was very strange. When he smelled it, it actually calmed his restless emotions due to his desire for battle. Zhongzhe had always known that his desire for battle was the reason why his blood would boil uncontrollably whenever there was a battle. Part of it was because he liked to hone his skills through battle. Another part was because in the 2nd year after he had become the disciple of the Chef Supreme, his master had brought him to the Outer Realm to train, and he had been cursed by an expert from the Outer Realm who had used the Sacred Source Life Form's ability. Even though that expert had been killed by his master, the Sacred Source Life Form's body had been refined into a treasure, and he had possessed it. However, there had been no way to remove the curse, and it was like a brand in his soul. In the end, this curse had imperceptibly turned into a kind of misfortune that fused with his soul. This curse had always been a thorn in Zhongzhe's side. When Zhongzhe turned around, Lin Yuan had already put away the brocade box containing the astrological wisdom epiphyllum powder. Zhongzhe was like a little wolf puppy, his nose wrinkled as he stopped in his tracks. When Lin Yuan walked to his side, Zhongzhe walked side by side with Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan could not help but feel a little strange as he looked at Zhongzhe, who was walking alongside him. She had just heard Long Tao say that Zhongzhe was not a person who was easy to get along with, but now, how could a person who was obviously not easy to get along with be so kind to her? Upon seeing Lin Yuan looking at him, Zhongzhe, whose nose was twitching, subconsciously said, "You're right. You smell so good." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan looked embarrassed and looked at Zhongzhe in surprise. He hurriedly took 2 steps forward to distance himself from Zhongzhe and followed closely behind Zhuoming. As soon as the words left his mouth, Zhongzhe immediately felt that his words were somewhat ambiguous. Just as Zhongzhe was about to continue walking alongside Lin Yuan, his thoughts paused. He thought about how the civil and martial duels were about to begin, and that he would not be able to say anything now. Zhongzhe decided to wait until the civil and martial duels were over. Then, he would get to know this young man whose scent could soothe his emotions. The 3rd round. End of this chapter. Chapter 864. After following Zhuoming through the long corridor, Lin Yuan arrived at another area of the Night Glory Palace. This area had many small rooms, and it was very similar to the rows of rented top-notch breeding rooms and observation rooms of the Fey Observer Association on the Creation Master Association's 3rd floor. Lin Yuan couldn't see how many rooms there were, but when he looked into the distance, he saw that this area was at least 300 meters long. According to the construction method of 1 breeding room on each side, there should be at least 60 breeding rooms. Each breeding room's door was carved with a different beast head, and each beast head was holding a dragon species phase head in its mouth. Lin Yuan sighed in his heart. How much does Chief Guard Yi hate dragon species phase? Zhuoming arrived in front of a bronze statue that was carved with a beast head and lifted it up with ease. He then turned around and prepared to let the challengers of the civil and martial duels draw a question. When Zhuoming saw Lin Yuan, who was first in line behind him, he walked over to Lin Yuan while holding the bronze statue. Just as Zhuoming was about to hand the bronze statue to Lin Yuan for him to draw a question, Zhongzhe took a step forward and took the bronze statue from Zhuoming. Zhongzhe took a step forward and took the bronze statue from Zhuoming before saying to Lin Yuan. Zhongzhe took a step forward and took the bronze statue from Zhuoming. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan gently thanked Zhongzhe and extended his hand into the bronze statue's mouth. He took out one of the many sheepskin scrolls in the bronze statue's abdomen. After taking out the scroll, Lin Yuan looked at Zhongzhe with some suspicion. Zhongzhe's actions could be said to be the same as fawning on Lin Yuan. Zhongzhe's sudden warm attitude toward Lin Yuan made Lin Yuan rather suspicious. Upon hearing Lin Yuan thanking him, Zhongzhe's cold face revealed a faint smile without a trace. Zhongzhe thought to himself. It seems like this youth named Lin Yuan isn't angry because of my slip of the tongue. Otherwise, he wouldn't thank me. Zhongzhe also took out a sheepskin scroll from the bronze statue and handed it back to Zhuoming. Zhuoming didn't find it strange that Zhongzhe took the initiative to get close to Lin Yuan. They were both His Majesty's disciples and were of the same age. It was normal for them to be close. However, the challengers standing behind Zhongzhe, who had been curious about Lu Jie standing up for Lin Yuan, could not help but become even more curious. She did not understand what kind of magic this young man had to be able to make Chief Guard Ye's disciple stand up for him, and then to be so close to Chef Supreme's disciple. It was simply too enviable. There were only 11 people participating in both the civil and martial arena, so the examination questions were quickly drawn. Zhuoming looked at the time and said, "From now on, each of you can choose a breeding room. Enter the breeding room and open the sheepskin scroll to check the questions on it. Then, hand the questions to the spirit guardian outside the room. The spirit guardian will help you prepare the materials after obtaining the scroll. After preparing the materials, the spirit guardian will immediately leave your room and will not disturb you from completing the test." As Zhuoming spoke, he began calculating the time taken. Hearing Zhuoming's words, everyone chose a breeding room nearby and entered it. Although Lin Yuan still did not know what the questions on the sheepskin scroll were, his speed in choosing the breeding room was not slow at all. There were a total of 154 youths in the Yeyang Palace's outer palace. Excluding the 25 challengers who were participating in the civil and martial arena, there were a total of 75 challengers who were participating in the martial arena. There were a total of 54 challengers who were qualified to participate in both the civil and martial arena. After knowing the harsh examination rules of the civil and martial arena, only 11 of them still chose to participate in the civil and martial arena. It could be said that each of these 11 challengers was the elite among the elites, and they were very confident in their strength. Even if Lin Yuan did not get first place in the civil and martial arena, he had to ensure that he could at least get second place. For this, he would not waste a single minute or second. After entering the breeding room, Lin Yuan nodded to the spirit guardian, who was waiting inside. Then, he untied the ribbon on the sheepskin scroll and looked at the questions on the scroll. When he looked at Lin Yuan, the solemn expression on his face disappeared. It was replaced by a relaxed expression. Lin Yuan saw the words on the sheepskin scroll. He upgraded 5 lop-eared electric rabbits from bronze, elite, to bronze, flawless, and healed one of the bronze, normal, lop-eared electric rabbit's fatal injury. Then, he upgraded it to bronze, flawless, like the previous 5. Before drawing this test, Lin Yuan had used the pollen condensed by astrologer Ji Tan's first flower to wash away the bad luck on his body. In other words, this test that Lin Yuan had drawn was guided by his body's providence. Before Lin Yuan had accidentally nurtured astrologer Ji Tan, he did not believe that there was such a thing as luck in the world. This was because luck was simply too illusory and difficult to materialize. However, since astrologer Ji Tan's ability was to remove bad luck, it indirectly proved that bad luck really existed in this world. Since there was bad luck, there must be providence on the other side. Especially after feeling the effects of providence, Lin Yuan decided to return to the return from faraway mansion to obtain more fays that could increase providence. For example, the 3 Mountain River Eternal Life carps in the red sandalwood longevity fish tank could actually be considered a kind of providence fay. However, the Mountain River Eternal Life carp's providence was targeted at plants, birds, beasts, fish, and insects. Its exclusive skill, place of life, did not have much effect on spirit chi professionals. At best, it would only make the life of the spirit chi professionals more comfortable. The providence phase that Lin Yuan was looking for could increase a spirit chi professional's providence. Lin Yuan had seen a few such fays when he had visited the Rare Life Form Pavilion previously. Each of them had a sky-high price, and Lin Yuan had only taken a few glances at them before they were taken off the shelves. These providence fays that were sold at sky-high prices in the Rare Life Form Pavilion were generally of very low grades. High-grade providence fays often existed in the hands of major factions. However, fays that could increase providence were truly rare. Even if the price was extremely high, there were still no factions that would nurture such fays as their own function. Generally, when a faction's function was developed to a certain extent, it could develop a second or even a third function. Take the Sun family at its peak as an example. Apart from the Dew Immortal Garden that nurtured plant-type fays, they also had the Dew Congealing Medical that had a healing function. Lin Yuan could now perfectly hold up the functions of Sky City's Creation Master by himself. The first function was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 865. Apart from customizing 1 bronze/epic fay per day according to the fate letter, Sky City also had a deep cooperation with the veteran faction, the Sea of Bliss, the Dew Immortal Garden, and the Indigo Azure Guard. Master Duanli was still working for him for free, but he would be able to complete the deal with her in a month's time. Master Duanli would not need to help him concoct platinum potions day and night. As the only Class 4 creation master in the Return from Faraway Manor, apart from researching the underground space's construction with Hu Quan, Master Hongshan basically spent the rest of his time enhancing fays for Zhang Xiaobai and the others. Master Hongshan did not have 3 heads and 6 arms. After enhancing the phase for Zhang Xiaobai and the others, it was enough for him to raise the grade of the angelfish of bliss. Therefore, the return from faraway manor's creation function would not have much development in the short term. It was enough to rely on Lin Yuan to produce creation master resources like a perpetual motion machine. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that perhaps Sky City could rely on his creation master means and use the light from Providence as a function to develop a brand new development route. The spirit guard waiting in the room was rather surprised at Lin Yuan's young age when he entered. After Lin Yuan opened the scroll, the spirit guard had been staring at his expression. However, the spirit guard could not help but have some doubts. When he saw the examination question, the youth's brows did not frown. Instead, he relaxed and let out a long sigh of relief. During the culture competition, the breeding room that he was in had been lucky enough to be selected. The challenger who had participated in the culture competition had immediately frowned and had a sullen face after seeing the examination question as though he had lost his virginity. Just as the spirit guard was feeling puzzled, the youth walked in front of him and handed over the sheepskin scroll. "Thank you for your hard work." The spirit guard hurriedly took the sheepskin scroll from the young man's hand. After reading the questions on it, he immediately went to prepare it. At the same time, he was sure that the youth did not have a sullen face because he knew he had no chance at all. The youth's examination question was actually the quality enhancement examination question that tested the creation master's ability the most. After taking the sheepskin scroll, the spirit guard walked to the huge cabinet that filled half the wall in the breeding room. There were close to 1,000 drawers on the huge cabinet that took up half the wall. The spirit guard checked the code on the bottom right corner of the scroll and opened the corresponding drawer. He took out the diamond face storage box from the drawer and handed it to Lin Yuan before leaving the room. It could be said that his actions were done in one go. From reading the examination questions to preparing the materials, not even half a minute had passed. Lin Yuan placed all the items in the face storage box on the operating table. Lin Yuan saw 5 purple-eyed lop-eared electric rabbits looking at him curiously. Occasionally, their long ears would overlap and emit bright purple electric arcs. Apart from these 5 healthy lop-eared electric rabbits, there was another lop-eared electric rabbit that was curling its body into a ball. His 2 big ears were lying on the ground, charred black. It was obvious that he had suffered heavy injuries. After checking the severely injured lop-eared electric rabbit's condition, Lin Yuan was certain that it was not far from death. This lop-eared electric rabbit that was on the verge of death was the one that Lin Yuan had to heal in the sheepskin scroll. The lop-eared electric rabbit might be extremely good-looking, cute, and could be kept as a pet. When the weather turned cold during autumn and winter, the lop-eared electric rabbit would be placed on the neck, and its 2 long ears would be the softest scarf. However, unlike the cute appearance of the lop-eared electric rabbit, it was a very violent, power offense-type fae. The lop-eared lightning rabbit that was on the brink of death had most likely suffered a backlash from the lightning energy emitted from its overlapping ears when it was releasing its skill. Apart from these 6 lop-eared electric rabbits, the diamond face storage box was left with a huge pile of various spiritual ingredients. There were many types of spiritual ingredients, but each of them was relatively rare. In order to raise the lop-eared electric rabbit's quality and heal its roots, only a few spiritual ingredients were needed. It was likely that there were so many spiritual ingredients to increase the difficulty of the examination. Lin Yuan chose a silver spiritual ingredient, the ma boiling leaf, which had a relatively high number of spiritual ingredients. The ma boiling leaf was a spiritual ingredient that creation masters and healing-type spirit chi professionals commonly used. It was favored by creation masters and healing-type spirit chi professionals, but it didn't mean that the ma boiling leaf could heal fays. The ma boiling leaf's true effect was to let the fae fall into a deep coma after consuming it, reducing the pain during the healing process. Once Sky City's creation master's function was developed, the ma boiling leaf could be said to be an indispensable spiritual ingredient when Lin Yuan nurtured fays. When Lin Yuan enhanced fays, he would always do it in the spirit lock spatial zone to save time. Without the ma boiling leaf, some fays with high intelligence would have an impression of the spirit lock spatial zone's environment. This wasn't what Lin Yuan wanted. Lin Yuan fed the numbing boiling leaves to the 6 lop-eared electric rabbits, and they quickly fell asleep after consuming the numbing boiling leaves. Upon seeing the situation, Lin Yuan immediately summoned Genius. After Genius was summoned, it stretched out its 5 fluffy tails. Then, she quickly climbed onto Lin Yuan's shoulder and rubbed her cheek against Lin Yuan's shoulder while speaking in a childish voice. Lin Yuan, Chime is preparing to live stream tomorrow night. Genius just helped Chime set up a live stream room on Star Web. Lin Yuan felt a little strange. Why would Genius help to decorate Chime's live streaming room? However, Lin Yuan didn't have the time to think about it. Genius, help me pick out the spirit materials that can be used to raise the quality of the 6 lop-eared lightning rabbits and heal their origins. After saying that, Lin Yuan extended his hand and covered the charred ears of the lop-eared electric rabbit that was on the verge of death. Lin Yuan circulated the spiritual power in his body and injected a massive amount of pure spiritual power into the lop-eared electric rabbit's body. In just a moment, the lop-eared electric rabbit's damaged roots recovered with Lin Yuan's hands. Its quality rose from bronze normal to bronze flawless like a rocket. In total, Lin Yuan had only used about 6 minutes. More than half of the time was used to heal the lop-eared electric rabbit's roots. Previously, when he nurtured phase and promoted them to epic, 95% of the time was spent on the transition from flawless to epic. Since it didn't require a lot of spirit chi to promote a phase quality to flawless, Lin Yuan could do it easily even if he wasn't in the spirit lock spatial zone. In fact, when Lin Yuan saw this question, he knew the true intention of the person who set this question. The second question was even more. End of this chapter. Chapter 867. Li Zhonglin sighed in admiration when he heard this. Regardless of what happens in the martial arena, little Yuan is first in the culture arena. That means that he has secured the top 2 spots in both the culture and martial arenas. When we go back, help me get your father's last spirit savory pig out. I will cook a few dishes for little Yuan. When Chef Supreme heard his daughter, Zhang Yingying's words, his face immediately darkened. Chef Supreme had sensed the Moon Empress gaze on him and felt her eyes full of vigor. In fact, even Chef Supreme himself was very amazed that Lin Yuan had been able to complete the civil and martial duel challenges within 20 minutes. It would be fine if Cold Moon and Black Moon, who were standing behind the Moon Empress, praised their young lord, but why was his daughter praising the Moon Empress disciple? She even said that he was much stronger than Zhongzhe. Wasn't this the same as admitting that Zhongzhe's creation master's strength was inferior to Lin Yuan's? Furthermore, how was bringing Zhongzhe to improve his creation master's strength considered entering the kitchen? Using cooking to perfectly fuse the components of spiritual ingredients was the path of a creation master that he pursued. Any path that perfectly fused the components of spiritual ingredients was a unique expression of life evolution. Among the Class 5 creation masters, only the bamboo monarch walked the path of a normal creation master's spirit fluid concoction. When the Moon Empress concocted her own unique formula, she would also use the moonlight to sublimate the spiritual ingredients into gaseous, material, and liquid states. Then, she would let these substances entangle and turn them into a wisp of fragrance. It was just like the method of concocting incense. Chef Supreme remembered that his daughter was very considerate when she was young. Ever since he accepted Li Zhonglin as a disciple, Li Zhonglin had started to take his precious daughter up trees to dig bird nests and jump into the fish pond to catch fish. She had never done anything good. Just as Chef Supreme was ridiculing Li Zhonglin, he heard Li Zhonglin's words. Li Zhonglin's words made Chef Supreme's already dark face turn as black as the bottom of a pot. Look! Look! Li Zhonglin, this bastard, is giving me a headache every day. He had even allowed his daughter to steal the last spirit savory pig that he had been raising in the palace. Putting aside the fact that Li Zhonglin instigated his wife to steal from his master and father-in-law, what kind of behavior was that? There's only one spirit savory pig left in the world because of you, yet you still don't want to let it go. If this spirit savory pig was harmed as well, the kitchen incense palace's signature spirit item would be completely gone. Why didn't I see Gu Lang uproot the entire stretch of purple bamboo forest? Why didn't he go and chop the 2 silver stamen gold luster caches outside the Radiant Moon Palace? Although he was complaining, Supreme Chef, who sat on the 13th chair, really couldn't do anything to his eldest disciple. A few days ago, he had said a few words to Li Zhonglin, and his daughter had immediately gone mad. If he said a few more words, wouldn't his daughter run away with Li Zhonglin again? The conversation between the Moon Empress and that calm voice had been heard by the senior factions and the top factions in Yeyang Palace. Only then did the senior factions and the top factions in charge of the Night Emperor Palace's inner palace suddenly understand Lin Yuan's identity. However, Lin Yuan's identity as the Moon Empress disciple did not surprise these top factions or veteran factions management generation. Those who should be shocked had already been shocked long ago. What else could be more shocking than a 17 or 18-year-old youth suppressing Chef Supreme's disciple? Being the first to complete the civil and martial challenges was even more shocking. Chef Supreme's young disciple was 23 years old after the new year. In terms of appearance, Lin Yuan and Zhong Zhe were at least 4 to 5 years apart. Now, it seemed that Lin Yuan's identity as the Moon Empress disciple was more reasonable to explain. Seeing Lin Yuan walk back to his small group, the senior factions and top factions management generation's gazes began to change. Most of the senior factions and top factions management generation's gazes gathered on Long Tu and Li Yunniao. Kansas. Seeing that Long Tu and Li Yunniao did not look surprised, it was clear that they obviously knew Lin Yuan's identity from the beginning. In the Coiled Dragon Valley, Li Yunniao could form a relationship with the Moon Empress and Chief Guard Ye's disciple, and the other top factions and veteran factions were very envious. As for Gao Pei, the other top factions and veteran factions management generation simply did not want to take another look at him. It could be said that Gao Pei was the biggest winner of this Nix assembly. Gao Pei's son, Gao Feng, was not just in this small group. It seemed that compared to Long Tao, Li Xian and the Moon Empress were more familiar with Chief Guard Ye's disciple. Moreover, Gao Feng had also obtained Lord Cicada Cry's favor and was very likely to be nominated as a disciple by Lord Cicada Cry during the Nix Assembly's main meeting. They did not know what kind of luck Gao Pei had to be able to have such a son. As for Sun Ningxiang in the small group, many of the senior factions and top factions' gazes became somewhat complicated. There had been rumors that the Sun family's internal changes had occurred, and it was very likely that they would fall from the ranks of the top factions within a few years. But now, it seemed that even if the Sun family's Du Immortal Garden was weak, it was definitely not simple internally. Many of the top factions management generation, who were eyeing the Sun family's Du Immortal Garden, could not help but ponder in their hearts. At that moment, Chef Supreme's expression became a little better when he saw Zhong Zhe also walking out of the long corridor. It had been about 23 minutes since the start of the civil and martial duels, and it was considered normal for Zhong Zhe to come out at this time. After seeing Zhong Zhe walk out, the bamboo monarch, who had not spoken much since Gu Lang had gone to participate in the civil and martial duels, spoke up. In a while, the 2 young fellows who are going to compete in the civil and martial duels are already here. After speaking, the bamboo monarch looked at the Moon Empress. The bamboo monarch had seen Zhong Zhe's strength before, and he had always been on par with his little disciple, Gu Lang. The civil and martial duels would be able to see the depth of the Moon Empress disciple's combat ability. When Gao Feng saw Lin Yuan walking over, he immediately pounced on him and gave him a bear hug. When Gao Feng used his hand to pat someone's shoulder, it gave people the feeling that someone had smashed a brick on their body. This bear hug made Lin Yuan feel as though a tank had collided with him. Upon seeing Lin Yuan's face turn red from Gao Feng's collision, Lu Jia hurriedly went forward to pull them apart. Long Tao, Li Xian, and Sun Ningxiang also came forward. Gao Feng chuckled. "Brother, congratulations. You finished both the civil and martial arenas very quickly." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan also revealed a smile. However, Lin Yuan was not happy that he had obtained first place in the civil and martial duels. First place was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 868. Lin Yuan clearly knew that he had obtained first place in both the civil and martial duels due to luck. If it had been another question, he might have become the last one. From the bottom of his heart, Lin Yuan felt that it was hard not to feel happy from such sincere congratulations between friends without any impurities. After Long Tao congratulated Lin Yuan, he saw Zhongzhe returning to the outer palace through the long corridor. Long Tao frowned and turned to ask Lin Yuan, how much do you know about Zhongzhe's strength? Lin Yuan frowned and turned to ask, Lin Yuan, how much do you know about Zhongzhe's strength? Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan shook his head gently. He did not know anything about Zhongzhe's strength. However, Lin Yuan did not feel that there was anything to worry about. During the duel with Zhongzhe, he could use Morbius True Data to examine Zhongzhe's fei. In an instant, he would have a comprehensive understanding of Zhongzhe's contracted fei. Zhongzhe might also be a creation master and could also inspect his fei. However, Lin Yuan didn't have any intention of summoning his contracted fei in the civil and martial dueling ring. Therefore, Zhongzhe's creation master ability would not be of any use in the martial duel. Since it was the civil and martial duel, he only needed to have a duel against Chef Supreme's disciple, Zhongzhe. Lin Yuan felt that his sacred source life form, sacred sword embracing queen, was destined to be used. Upon seeing that Lin Yuan did not know Zhongzhe's strength, Long Tao recalled the duel between him and Zhongzhe in the Radiant Sacred Hall. He said with a grave expression, Zhongzhe's contracted feis are mainly fire-type feis and have extremely strong explosive power. During the duel, you have to pay special attention to Zhongzhe's sudden explosive power. At this point, Long Tao didn't continue speaking. Firstly, this was a secret duel in the Radiant Sacred Hall. Secondly, it had been a long time since Long Tao and Zhongzhe's duel. During this period of time, Zhongzhe's strength should have improved greatly again. Long Tao was afraid that if he revealed Zhongzhe's strength during the duel, it might cause Lin Yuan to misjudge Zhongzhe's strength. If that was the case, Long Tao would have committed a great sin. Therefore, Long Tao only gave a general description of Zhongzhe's feis attributes and reminded Lin Yuan to be careful of Zhongzhe's instant explosive power. At that time, the blazing fire had almost cast a shadow on Long Tao. When Lin Yuan heard Long Tao's words, his eyes lit up. If Zhongzhe mainly contracted a fire attribute fei, it would simply be great news for him. Due to the Princess Robe's engraved laws, his resistance to darkness type was the strongest. Next was the resistance to the fire attribute. The Cold Flame Law, which Lin Yuan had specially upgraded to Myth 3, contained the changes of the ice and fire attributes. Moreover, the Gilded Flame Dragon Lice's skirt was also engraved with the Burning Flame Law that the Gilded Flame Dragon Lice had comprehended. The Flame Dragonless Law crystal fragments had been provided by Duan He when he joined Sky City. Although the law crystal of the mythical breed Gilded Flame Dragon Lice wasn't complete, the small pile of law crystal fragments could still be pieced together into a complete law crystal. This unlucky flame dragon lice must have been killed by the lightning horn sky rumbling snail and the six-headed sea demon snake. Otherwise, the law crystal fragments wouldn't be so complete. It could be said that Lin Yuan had the first advantage in the duel with Zhongzhe. If Zhongzhe's contracted fei was not engraved on the princess robe, even if Lin Yuan had integrated all the Radiance Federation's recorded combat skills and movement techniques, he would still have to be cautious when using the spirit herbs to fight. In that kind of intensive attack, it was not realistic to use the ethereal jellyfish's diamond ability, spatial transfer, to transfer the space filled with elemental energy to the dimension. It was more cost-effective for the ethereal jellyfish's diamond ability, spatial transfer, to transfer large-scale elemental damage instantaneously. Otherwise, the spiritual power consumed by the ethereal jellyfish's diamond ability, spatial transfer, was not something that Lin Yuan could easily afford. After understanding Zhongzhe's fei's attributes, Lin Yuan had some confidence in his heart. Big brother Long, I'll be careful. Long Tao looked into Lin Yuan's eyes and found that he didn't panic about the upcoming duel. Instead, there was a sense of confidence in his eyes. Long Tao knew that Lin Yuan's strength was definitely much stronger than he had imagined. Long Tao couldn't help but be full of anticipation for the duel between Zhongzhe and Lin Yuan. Zhongzhe walked to Gu Lang's side and glanced in Lin Yuan's direction from time to time. Gu Lang asked with a smile. "What's wrong? Are you shocked?" "Are you?" At this point, Gu Lang immediately stopped. Gu Lang realized that Zhongzhe's eyes didn't show any disappointment because of the shock. Instead, he was abnormally excited. At the same time, there was a trace of imperceptible passion in his eyes. "Big brother Gu Lang, I realized today that I met someone who can suppress my desire to fight." Upon hearing Zhongzhe's words, Gu Lang was confused. Gu Lang's curse that had turned into misfortune could be said to be the kitchen fragrance palace's secret. After Chef Supreme realized that he couldn't resolve Zhongzhe's misfortune, he didn't look for the Bamboo Monarch and the Moon Empress for help. Thus, Gu Lang naturally couldn't know the true reason why Zhongzhe was abnormally fanatical about fighting. Just as Gu Lang was feeling puzzled, Zhongzhe pulled him and said, "Let's go, big brother Gu Lang. Brother Gu Lang, let's go over there and say hello to them." Without giving Gu Lang any time to react, Gu Lang was pulled by Zhongzhe toward Lin Yuan's direction. Gu Lang came back to his senses and didn't struggle free from Zhongzhe's hand. In Gu Lang's opinion, it was normal to greet them over there. The Moon Empress and Chief Guard Ye's disciple naturally had to get to know each other, and they would have to interact in the future. However, Gu Lang didn't understand why Zhongzhe, who was a relatively indifferent person, would take the initiative to greet others. Could it be because of the civil and martial duels, Zhongzhe and the Moon Empress disciple appreciated each other's talents? Zhongzhe pulled Gu Lang over to Lin Yuan's side and saw Gao Feng standing beside Lin Yuan with his hand on Lin Yuan's shoulder. At that moment, Zhongzhe noticed that the 6 people in Lin Yuan's small circle had noticed him, so he immediately introduced himself. "I am Zhongzhe." After speaking, Zhongzhe took a step forward without a trace and inserted himself between Gao Feng and Lin Yuan. Upon seeing this, Gao Feng hurriedly moved to the side and subconsciously thought that Zhongzhe and Lin Yuan knew each other before. Zhongzhe, who was standing beside Lin Yuan with satisfaction, started to quickly sniff. However, after this sniff, Zhongzhe realized that he couldn't smell that fragrance that could suppress his misfortune anymore. The second one was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 869. Thus, Zhongzhe subconsciously turned his head and took a step closer to Lin Yuan. Since Zhongzhe was taller than Lin Yuan, Zhongzhe's action of sniffing at the top of his head made Lin Yuan think that his hair had a strange smell. When Lin Yuan's body was weak in the Xia region, no matter how busy he would still take a bath every day. Now that his body was strong and his conditions were better, he did not miss a single day. Moreover, he had already used the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar to wash away the impurities on his body. Even if he did not wash his hair for a lifetime, there would not be any unpleasant smell. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly thought of what Zhongzhe had said to him. "You smell so good." Lin Yuan finally realized that Zhongzhe was talking about the smell of the astrology wisdom epiphyllum's pollen. This made Lin Yuan look at Zhongzhe with an increasingly strange gaze. There was something strange about astrologer Jitan's pollen, and that was that those who weren't infected with misfortune were almost unable to detect its fragrance. Only those with bad luck could smell the fragrance of astrologer Jitan's pollen. The heavier the misfortune on one's body, the greater the attraction of the astrology wisdom epiphyllum's pollen. It was just like when Lin Yuan had eaten the pollen, he had not smelled any fragrance at all. It was as though he was swallowing some spicy scraps in his throat. Lin Yuan thought to himself. Could it be that Zhongzhe is also tainted with misfortune? Thus, Lin Yuan took out a small piece of pollen that had fallen on the breeding table beside the astrology wisdom epiphyllum and gently crushed it into powder with his fingertips. Lin Yuan immediately noticed an excited look on Zhongzhe's face, and the speed at which he sniffed his nose became faster. He was just like a small wolf dog. After verification, Lin Yuan also confirmed his guess in his heart. It seemed that Zhongzhe was indeed infected with misfortune. Given Zhongzai's sensitivity to the astrology wisdom epiphyllum's pollen, the misfortune on Zhongzai was already very serious. Zhongzai was a cold person who was not good at talking. After joining Lin Yuan's small group, he had not spoken much. On the other side, Gu Lang was a gentle and talkative person. Gu Lang deliberately befriended him. In just a short while, Lin Yuan, Lu Jia, Long Tao, Li Xian, Gao Feng, and Sun Ningxiang got into a fight. This made the younger generation of the surrounding top and veteran forces look at this small group with even more envy. In Indigo Azure City, everyone had to address Zheng Kaiyuan as second young master. However, ever since Miao Zhua had been thrown out, Zheng Kaiyuan seemed to have lost his backbone and was overcautious in everything he did. Zheng Kaiyuan originally wanted to participate in the martial arena competition, but because he was constantly panicking, he didn't dare to participate in the end. Before Zheng Kaiyuan came to the Nix assembly, his master, Miao Qi, had instructed him to stay by Miao Zhua's side. Now that something so serious had happened to Miao Zhua, even if his master, Miao Qi, doted on him, he was destined to be implicated by Miao Zhua. In fact, the Miao clan might even abandon their support and assistance to the Zheng clan in a fit of rage. At the thought of his upcoming situation, Zheng Kaiyuan mustered up all his courage and walked toward Lin Yuan's small group. On one hand, Zheng Kaiyuan wanted to help Miao Zhua and see if he could get the forgiveness of Chief Guard Ye's disciple and that youth. On the other hand, Zheng Kaiyuan felt that he was very good at making friends. He wanted to see if he could be lucky enough to get along with Chief Guard Yi, Chef Supreme, and Bamboo Monarch's disciple and integrate into this small group. When Zheng Kaiyuan walked, he felt that his legs were trembling because the status of these people he was walking toward was not something he could compare to. Even Miao Zhua, whom he had always had to look up to, could not compare to these people's statuses. Otherwise, Miao Zhua would not have been thrown out with his soul injured because he had casually pointed at him. Seeing Zheng Kaiyuan walking in his direction, Zhongzai, who was quickly sniffing beside Lin Yuan, immediately frowned. Zhongzai, who had always been indifferent, had always disliked people approaching him in such situations. Therefore, as Zheng Kaiyuan approached, Zhongzai's expression became colder and colder. Normally, Zhongzai would have flared up and asked Zheng Kaiyuan to get lost. However, Zhongzai had not experienced the conflict in the Night Palace and did not know the relationship between Zheng Kaiyuan and Lin Yuan. If Zheng Kaiyuan was Lin Yuan's friend, it would not be good for him to rashly flare up, so Zhongzai endured it. When Lu Jie saw Zheng Kaiyuan walk closer, he subconsciously stepped forward to block in front of Lin Yuan. He could not forget the attack that he, Lin Yuan, and the others had suffered outside Indigo Azure City. Jiao Hansong was from the Zheng family's third lineage, so it was reasonable to say that he had no direct relationship with Zheng Kaiyuan. However, Nightmare 6 had been sent by Zheng Kaiyuan, so there was a death feud between them. If this was not the Night Palace's outer palace, even if he was the Night Palace's young palatial lord, he would not have killed Zheng Kaiyuan in front of so many veteran factions and the younger generation of the top factions. At this moment, Zheng Kaiyuan was already a dead man. Zheng Kaiyuan was about to greet him carefully but did not expect Chief Guard Ye's disciple to be so hostile toward him. Could it be because of the conflict just now? Miao Zhua had been the one acting tough in that conflict, and he had only stood by Miao Zhua's side. Apart from that, he had not done anything in that conflict. When Lin Yuan saw Zheng Kaiyuan walking over with a faint timid expression, he vaguely understood Zheng Kaiyuan's intention. Lin Yuan immediately revealed a meaningful smile. Lin Yuan waved at Zheng Kaiyuan and said, "All right. If you have something to say, why don't you come over and say it?" When Zheng Kaiyuan heard Lin Yuan's words, the faintly timid expression on his face immediately turned into pleasant surprise. Lu Jie looked at Lin Yuan with some confusion, not understanding his purpose in doing this. Lin Yuan called Zheng Kaiyuan to his side and gave him his contact information after a few words. He then ignored Zheng Kaiyuan. When he revealed his identity at the Nix assembly, the Miao family would definitely think of ways to find an opportunity to apologize to him and Lu Jie. Lin Yuan didn't reject Zheng Kaiyuan's goodwill. Instead, he asked Zheng Kaiyuan to leave his contact information. It was to mislead the disciples of the other veteran forces and peak forces into thinking that Zheng Kaiyuan had formed a relationship with them. This would also give the Miao family a way to contact them. At that time, he would just sit back and wait for the Miao family to come knocking on his door. There had always been more than one way to attack the enemy. In addition to the hard steel in the front, the poisonous sugar in the back was often more lethal. At that moment, Zhuo Ming and Yuzha returned to the outer palace through the long corridor with several challengers from both the civil and martial arenas. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan took a deep breath, knowing that the real battle was about to begin. Third night, asking for monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 870. Following closely behind Zhuo Ming and Yuzha was a tall woman. She looked to be 25 or 26 years old. She looked rather mature and had a mature figure. When she walked, she seemed to be thinking about something. The tall woman hurriedly walked 2 steps to Lurk's side and asked softly. Yuzha hurriedly walked to Yuzha's side and asked softly, "Lady Yuzha, how long did the first and second place of the civil and martial duels take?" Upon hearing that, Yuzha told the tall woman the time Lin Yuan and Zhong Zhe took to pass the test. As soon as Zhuo Ming and Yuzha's figures appeared in the long corridor, the outer palace of Night Palace had quietened down. The woman was quite far away from Lin Yuan. Even though the outer palace was very quiet and the woman's question was not clear, it still reached Lin Yuan's ears. Lin Yuan could not help but raise his brows. This tall woman looked so mature, but she actually had a baby's voice. Moreover, it was a little too coquettish. Through his perception, Lin Yuan found that this tall woman had a rich vitality fluctuation. He was abnormally familiar with this kind of vitality fluctuation. Whenever Lin Yuan activated the Jasmine Lily's exclusive skill, Life Imprint, and consumed the vitality energy in it, his body would be the conductor of the huge vitality. Even after the vitality energy in the Life Imprint was exhausted, his body would still carry a special vitality fluctuation for a period of time. It could be assumed that this tall woman had used some sort of trump card when she was completing the civil and martial duel challenges. The tall woman took less than 40 minutes to complete the civil and martial duels. If Lin Yuan's record was correct, it should be 39 minutes and 27 seconds. The tall woman's speed of completing the test was nearly 3 minutes faster than Long Tao's. It could be seen that this tall woman's creation master ability was strong. The green spirit chi clothing that the tall woman was wearing had the simplified imprints of hundreds of purebred healing type phase. These simplified imprints were spread on this green spirit chi clothing in a disorderly manner, but it gave this green spirit chi clothing a flourishing beauty. According to the faction symbol on the woman's neck, Lin Yuan knew that this tall woman was from a top faction, the Rhine life form. The Rhine life form had absolute authority and nobility among the Radiance Federation's top factions. Every 3 years, as the top factions declined or rose, the top factions would be rearranged. Rhine, on the other hand, had been in the top 3 of the top forces for nearly 100 years and had never changed his position. Even if there were any changes, it would be between the first and the third. The Rhine Guild Club, which was under the banner of Rhine Living Guild, had become the champion of the Guild Alliance's tournament last year. When Long Tao saw that Lin Yuan had been looking at this tall woman from the Rhine life form, he said, "That's right. This woman's name is Xing Yin. She's the person with the most potential among the Rhine life form's younger generation. She's also one of the younger generation that the Rhine life forms fully support. This woman might not be in the Radiance 100 sequence, but she has always been active among the younger generation. As the leader of the competition in the Rhine Club. He never goes on stage, but he's always making battle plans for the Rhine Club Guild." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan immediately thought of Shi Su and Shi Su. As the Radiance 100 Sequence 8, Shi Su was also a member of the Rhine Guild Club's main force. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard Long Tao's rather fearful voice. Given Xing Yin's age and strength, she can be in the Radiance 100 Sequence. However, she has never participated in the Radiance 100 sequence selection. Otherwise, White Devil Daisy wouldn't be known as the strongest healing type spirit chi professional in the Radiance 100 sequence. It is rumored that Xing Yin has a radiant light metal. Based on the functionality and limitations of healing-type spirit chi professionals, even if Xing Yin has no fate as a radiant light envoy, it is still possible for her to enter the Radiant Light Knights and become one of the 10 members. Lin Yuan could keenly sense that Long Tao had already regarded this woman named Xing Yin as his competitor, so he secretly remembered her name. After leaving Zhuo Ming and Yuzha's side, most of the younger female members of the veteran and peak forces gathered around Xing Yin. Xing Yin squinted her eyes and smiled sweetly, greeting the girls around her. Obviously, he was very popular. Xing Yin won the 3rd place in the civil and military arena. According to the rules of the civil and military arena, Xing Yin won the 3rd place. At this moment, Xing Yin didn't need to participate in the civil and martial duels. She had already secured 3rd place in the civil and martial duels. She could obtain 90 drops of silver stamen gold luster kasha nectar that could wash away impurities on the body and 10 drops of silver stamen gold luster kasha nectar that could wash away soul impurities. It could be said that the entire Yeyang Palace, be it the inner palace or the outer palace, had their eyes on Lin Yuan and Zhong Zhe. Lin Yuan felt his blood boil for a long time. In the past few months, Lin Yuan had been constantly improving his strength and increasing his trump cards for this battle. Unlike Lin Yuan's boiling blood, Zhong Zhe, who had never been able to control himself in battles, sniffed the fragrance and felt a rare calmness in his heart. For some reason, Zhong Zhe was very reluctant to leave this smell, or perhaps he liked the feeling of standing next to this young man in front of him. In a while, the civil and military arena's final duel would be between him and Lin Yuan, and he probably would not be able to smell this fragrance on the stage. At that time, his old problem would act up again, and his mind would be controlled by the enthusiasm of battle and drown in the thrill of battle. When Zhong Zhe had completed the civil and military arenas section of the civil and military arenas section, he had thought that he would be the first in the civil and military arena without any suspense. After coming out, he found out that the first place in the civil and military arena had already been taken by someone else. Thus, Zhong Zhe focused his attention elsewhere and wanted to know who was the first place in the civil and military arena. In the end, he did not expect the first place in the civil and military arenas section to be the young man whose aura could suppress his misfortune. Somehow, Zhong Zhe felt that there was a special kind of fate between him and Lin Yuan. However, Zhong Zhe was also a very competitive person. Since he had lost the civil and military arenas section, he had to win it back in the martial arenas section. At that moment, Zhuo Ming walked to the place where the martial arenas section had been held and announced loudly. The civil and military arenas section of the civil and military arenas section has officially ended. Now, let us invite Lord Lin Yuan and Lord Zhong Zhe onto the stage to complete the civil and military arenas section. Zhuo Ming's words caused the pupils of the veteran factions and the top faction's younger generation to shrink. Everyone sharply noticed that Zhuo Ming had used the word Lord when addressing Lin Yuan. First place. End of this chapter. Chapter 871. Moreover, Lin Yuan's name was before Zhong Zhe's, which meant that Zhuo Ming subconsciously thought that Lin Yuan's status was higher than Zhong Zhe's. Everyone could not help but guess Lin Yuan's identity again. Many of the top faction's younger generation thought that before coming to the Great Knight Assembly, the mysterious disciple that the Moon Empress had accepted might also appear at the Great Knight Assembly. It seemed that Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple. The veteran faction's younger generation could not all guess Lin Yuan's identity, but almost all of the top faction's younger generation had heard the news in advance. Even if the news was blocked, the top faction's younger generation still heard that the blood moon in the sky a few months ago was related to the Moon Empress' mysterious disciple. At that moment, Zhong Zhe subconsciously walked in Zhuo Ming's direction, but then he thought of something and stopped. He turned his body slightly. Although Zhong Zhe did not say anything to invite Lin Yuan, his actions were obviously waiting for Lin Yuan to leave together. Since Zhong Zhe had just joined the small circle, even Long Tao, Li Xian, Gao Feng, and Sun Ningxiang, who were more familiar with Lin Yuan, still sincerely cheered him on. Lu Jie stood by Lin Yuan's side and did not move at all. He only cheered Lin Yuan on. Gu Lang raised his eyebrows in surprise when he saw Lu Jie's actions. Under normal circumstances, cheering on two people at the same time was undoubtedly the wisest choice. However, Lu Jie only cheered for Lin Yuan, which proved that he had a strong preference for Lin Yuan. This was a sign that their relationship was extremely good. Gu Lang had just met Lin Yuan, so he naturally had a better relationship with Zhong Zhe. However, Gu Lang still said to Zhong Zhe and Lin Yuan separately. Zhong Zhe, Lin Yuan, you two have to do your best later. If Lin Yuan wins and Zhong Zhe's skills are inferior, why don't you let Zhong Zhe cook personally and treat the three of us to a big meal at the Kitchen Fragrance Palace? Zhong Zhe stared at Gu Lang for a long time, feeling that Gu Lang was taking advantage of him. However, Zhong Zhe was very willing to treat Lin Yuan to a meal. Thinking about how he had tricked Gu Lang and made Gu Lang only compete in the civil arena, Zhong Zhe could only nod and agree. Long Tao, Gao Feng, Li Xian, and Sun Ningxiang could tell that Gu Lang had assigned the four of them. Long Tao, Li Xian, Gao Feng, and Sun Ningxiang didn't have any objections. With their status, they were not qualified to enter a place like the Kitchen Incense Palace. Seeing Zhong Zhe nod his head, Gu Lang added. If Zhong Zhe wins and Lin Yuan's skills are inferior, then Zhong Zhe will have to fulfill his promise at the Night Message Pavilion and set up 300 plates in the Kitchen Fragrance Palace. When the time comes, I'll treat the two of you to a meal cooked by Zhong Zhe. Don't think that Zhong Zhe usually doesn't like to talk, but when it comes to cooking, no one can compare. Lu Jie couldn't help but show a defiant expression behind his mask. I, Lu Jie, have never been afraid of anyone when it comes to cooking. When Lin Yuan ate the food he cooked, he was full of praises. Lu Jie felt that he should compete with Zhong Zhe in cooking if he had the chance. Due to the special nature of his sacred source life form, he could not use it against Zhong Zhe. Since Zhong Zhe had a sacred source life form in the lead, Lu Jie shouldn't be able to win against him. However, when it came to cooking, even if Zhong Zhe was Chef Supreme's disciple, he might not be able to compare to Lu Jie. Lu Jie was the man who had captured the appetite of the entire Return from Faraway Manor. Before Zheng Kaiyuan had come to the Nix conference, he had wanted to attract everyone's attention. However, now that he was in this small circle and was the center of attention, Zheng Kaiyuan felt an indescribable pressure. The more one cared about their status, the more they would understand the weight of their status. The gazes of the top faction's younger generation all weighed down on Zheng Kaiyuan, causing sweat to appear on Zheng Kaiyuan's back. However, Zheng Kaiyuan raised his head high and tried his best to pretend that he was a member of this small circle. Seeing that everyone was cheering for Lin Yuan and Zhong Zhe, Zheng Kaiyuan quickly and carefully joined in. However, when he saw Zhong Zhe's stern expression, Zheng Kaiyuan immediately wanted to retreat. Thinking that Lin Yuan had called him over, Zheng Kaiyuan mustered his courage and walked to Lin Yuan's side. Zheng Kaiyuan, who had always been eloquent, could not help but stutter. Lord Lin Yuan, good luck. Lin Yuan looked at Zheng Kaiyuan with a meaningful gaze. When Zheng Kaiyuan met Lin Yuan's gaze, he felt a chill run down his spine, and he panicked. At this moment, Zheng Kaiyuan heard the clear and pleasant voice of the young man. You have to work hard too. Work hard and complete the mission of a communication link. People were destined to be frivolous after gaining power. Frivolousness toward people of lower status would bring envy. Frivolousness toward people of equal status would bring envy. Frivolousness toward people of higher status would only bring disgust. If the Miao family's family head personally begged Zheng Kaiyuan, how arrogant would Zheng Kaiyuan be in the Miao family and the Zheng family? Lin Yuan had just called Zheng Kaiyuan into his small circle and observed Zheng Kaiyuan's performance. Lin Yuan knew that Zheng Kaiyuan was not a humble person. Lin Yuan was not afraid that Zheng Kaiyuan would be arrogant in the Miao family and the Zheng family, but he was afraid that Zheng Kaiyuan would not be arrogant enough. In the future, Lin Yuan would not need to personally deal with Zheng Kaiyuan. When a platform was built from flat ground, it would collapse without any push. The higher the platform was, the harder the person standing on the platform would fall when it collapsed. What kind of torture would be waiting for Zheng Kaiyuan from the Miao family and the Zheng family? When hatred accumulated to the extreme, it would turn into a malicious spirit. Lin Yuan could treat his friends like spring all year round, but when facing enemies that wanted to take his life, he felt that it was not enough to turn into a cold winter. Lin Yuan and Zhong Zhe entered the martial arena under everyone's eyes. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and slightly gathered strength in his feet. He leaned forward and entered a fully focused offensive state. Zhong Zhe left Lin Yuan's side and stood on the stage. That battle frenzy could no longer be suppressed. Following Zhou Ming's command, Zhong Zhe immediately summoned the two fays. One of the palm-sized orange rats did not join the battle after it was summoned. After it was summoned, it did not join the battle. Instead, it scuttled onto Zhong Zhe's shoulder and squeaked. The other was a giant magma ball that was constantly changing its shape. In just a short period of time, the giant magma ball had changed back and forth into 7 or 8 different beasts. Every time it transformed, the giant magma ball would emit the unique wild aura of the beast. The second one was even more. End of this chapter. Chapter 872. Lin Yuan subconsciously used true data to look at the palm-sized orange rat and the huge magma ball that could constantly transform into various beast forms. Fey name, Sky-Burning Centipede, Fey species, Fur/Toothed Beast, Fey grade, Diamond, 10 out of 10, Fey type, Fire, Fey quality, Fantasy V abilities Frowny Face Fire Devour. Increase one's fire element capacity by devouring strange flames and allow the fire element in the body to transform according to the characteristics of the devoured strange flames. Scorching Gaze, gather pure fire element energy in the eyes to stare at the target. The target being stared at will enter a burning state. Fire Tempering, extract the energy in the strange flames and use various types of strange flames to temper one of the strange flames, inducing the strange flames to evolve. During the tempering process, one's physique can be enhanced at the same time. Flame Revival, instantly condense all the fire element energy into flames with the burning characteristics. The flames in the burning state have the effect of burning vitality. Group Flame Heart Flame, sacrifice 100 types of flames with different characteristics and condense a bunch of flames that can burn the spirit and spiritual energy. It will burn the target's spirit and spiritual energy. When the target's spirit and spiritual energy are exhausted, a flame will ignite from the depths of the target's heart and spiritual energy, burning the body from the inside out. Flame Energy Transmission, transmit one's own flame energy to other fire element phase and cause them to enter a berserk state. Exclusive skill Frowny Face Exceptional Flame 8 Refinements, refine 8 types of flames in the body into source flames. When attacking the target, spit out 8 types of exceptional flames. The 8 types of exceptional flames will stack up continuously for 8 times of gradually increasing damage. Fire Fantasy Land, activate all the fire characteristics in the body. Each fire characteristic will turn into a brick and use the bricks and tiles to form a domain formed by the fire characteristics. Within the domain, the fire damage will be multiplied. Fey name, Reincarnation Flame Beast, Source Fire, Fey species, Elemental/Elemental class, Fey grade, Diamond, 10/10, Fey type, Fire/Source, Fey quality, Fantasy III abilities Frowny Face Metal Refining, devour metal and use flames to burn the metal, forming a viscous magma-like body. Beast type attachment, by devouring the bloodline power of a specific beast, increase the lava body's transformation ability. The transformed lava body will launch a special flame attack based on the phase bloodline advantage. Beast Bloodline Fusion, can fuse multiple beast bloodlines within one's body, forming a flame beast that combines various beast bloodlines and innate abilities. Flame of Reincarnation, when the reincarnation flame beast is fatally injured, as long as there is a continuous supply of fire elemental energy, the reincarnation flame beast will be reborn within the fire elemental energy. Boiling Flame Body, relies on swallowing metal to form a magma body that quickly spits out fire-type energy. While dealing burn damage to the target, the molten metal will condense into a weapon to attack the target. Reincarnation Point, the reincarnation flame beast will offer half of its fire elemental energy as a sacrifice. After the sacrifice, it will automatically activate its second exclusive skill, Lava Demon God. Exclusive skill Frowny Face Flame Division. When receiving a fatal attack, the reincarnation flame beast will automatically split its body to offset the damage. At the same time, it will rely on the beast-type phase bloodline to split into a new body. The number of splits depends on the number of beast-type bloodlines in the body. Lava Demon God uses pure fire elemental energy to promote the fusion of the beast-type phase bloodline in the reincarnation flame beast's body and uses the pure fire elemental energy to induce multiple distortions and evolutions, forming a monster with a lava body. After the Lava Demon God appears, it will attack all targets on the field indiscriminately. Just as Lin Yuan finished looking at the two-phase exclusive skills, the huge lava ball had already turned into a 4-meter-long, 2-meter-tall majestic tiger. It roared and pounced at him. The lava giant tiger's roar contained blazing fire elemental energy, which caused the air in the arena to become abnormally scorched. If Zhuo Ming hadn't put up a barrier, the younger generation of the top factions and veteran factions wouldn't have been able to enjoy the show in peace. At that moment, they were already unable to bear the blazing fire elemental energy. At that moment, the younger generation, including Lu Jie, couldn't help but exclaim. Zhongzhe had already started his attack, but Lin Yuan had yet to summon his contracted Fei. Just as the blazing fire elemental energy was about to engulf Lin Yuan, even louder exclamations echoed. Even the younger generation of the veteran factions and the top factions, who had received good education since young, couldn't help but curse. Fuck, Lord Zhuo Ming has already said that the match has begun, and Lord Zhongzhe has also summoned his Fei to attack. Why isn't Lin Yuan summoning his Fei? Damn! With such pure fire elemental energy burning, I'm afraid even a piece of platinum spiritual ingredient will be melted into soup. Could it be that an accident is going to happen during the duel? Will Lin Yuan turn into coke? Sun Ningxiang and Gao Feng didn't expect Zhongzhe's attack to be so fierce. They were a little flustered and couldn't calm down to analyze the situation on the stage. Upon seeing Lin Yuan being engulfed by the flames, Lu Jie subconsciously wanted to rush toward the arena. At that moment, Lu Jie felt a pair of hands land on his shoulders, and Gu Lang's gentle voice echoed in his ears. Concern leads to confusion. As the young palatial lord of Night End Palace, do you still doubt Zhuo Ming's control of the battlefield? If something really happens to Lin Yuan, I think Zhuo Ming will be the most anxious one. Lu Jie still clenched his fists and gritted his teeth as he looked in the direction of the arena. Just like Lu Jie's concern, the Moon Empress was also shocked when she saw the fire engulfing Lin Yuan. However, she immediately calmed down because she saw Lin Yuan, who was in the blazing flames, swinging his fist and using his physical body to smash at the tiger-shaped Fei that had transformed into the reincarnation flame beast. It could be said that Lin Yuan wasn't the slightest bit affected by the blazing flames. It was just like how the raging flames carried by the tiger-shaped Fei's roar had no temperature. Under Lin Yuan's punch, the huge tiger-shaped Fei's body was ejected like a cannonball and ruthlessly smashed into the Night End Palace's outer palace's floor, which was made of suzerain dark crystal. Lin Yuan flipped over and stood cleanly on the ground. He looked at Zhongzhe, who was immersed in the battle, and smiled. If you want to cause damage to me, the intensity of such flames is still far from enough. After writing the data of the two Feis for 3.5 hours, they had lost 100 strands of hair. On account of Button's hard work, please give me monthly votes and recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 873. If the younger generation of the veteran factions and pinnacle factions had been worried about Lin Yuan's situation, then they were extremely surprised now. Heavens! Lin Yuan can't be a humanoid Fei, right? How did he send such a huge giant lava tiger flying with a single punch without getting burned? Even if the left guard official can't feel the actual temperature of the blazing flames with a shield, the reincarnation flame beast is a Diamond X/Fantasy 3 source-type life form. The key is that this elemental source-type life form evolved from the source fire and was nurtured by Lord Zhongzhe. A series of exclamations echoed in the Night Dawn Palace's outer palace. The area with the most exclamations came from the Pinnacle Faction's Rhine life form, Sheng Yin, who was in the circle of the younger generation of the Pinnacle Factions and Veteran Factions. None of the younger generation members brought by their families to participate in the Nyx assembly were not geniuses. All of them had suppressed their male peers in the faction they belonged to, and their families had poured a lot of blood and sweat into them. Even if these geniuses were usually pursued by men, they could not help but show their girlish feelings when facing men who were more outstanding. It could be said that the most eye-catching people in the Night Dawn Palace's outer palace were on the martial and civil arenas. Regardless of rank and status, it could be said that the top two in the civil and martial arenas were more valuable than the first and the first in the civil and martial arenas. Lin Yuan and Zhong Zai's looks were also top-notch, and they each had their own merits. Zhong Zai was wearing red half-body armor, and his stern face was filled with battle fanaticism and wildness. Lin Yuan was usually calm, and the beauty contained in his sunny smile could definitely dazzle people's eyes. Coupled with the fresh natural aura on his body, these 24 or 25-year-old geniuses could not help but want to rub Lin Yuan's head. Big sister Sheng Yin, I didn't expect Lord Zhong Zai to suffer a small loss at the beginning. Sheng Yin immediately denied it. A casual test at the beginning of this duel can't prove anything. Zhong Zai's strength is not just this. Although her voice sounded coy, her tone was very serious. Sheng Yin then recalled that 2 years ago, when she was a healing-type spirit chi professional, she had been invited by Gu Lang to help with a mission in a Class 3 swamp dimensional rift. Before participating in the mission, Sheng Yin knew that the purpose of the mission was to capture a snake Medusa. For a dimensional creature like Medusa, no matter how much its grade increased, it was still a half-human dimensional creature. Spirit chi professionals couldn't contract ordinary dimensional life forms, but some dimensional life forms that had undergone special mutations could be contracted by spirit chi professionals. The snake Medusa was a dimensional life form that could be contracted by spirit chi professionals. When the swamp dimensional life form, Medusa, had evolved into a snake due to an unknown mutation. It looked roughly the same as an ordinary snake species Fae. However, the snake Medusa had inherited all of Medusa's abilities. It was both powerful and rare. At that time, Gu Lang had placed great importance on this snake Medusa, but who would have thought that this snake Medusa's bloodline was abnormally powerful? Before transforming into a snake, it was already at the pinnacle of Class 3, and the ceiling of the swamp dimensional rift had faintly reached the standard of a suzerain. After transforming into a snake, the Medusa was no longer a dimensional life form. Hence, the Medusa's strength exceeded the pinnacle Class 3 swamp dimensional rift standard. It still wouldn't be repelled by the dimensional rift or cause the dimensional rift to evolve. This was 2 years ago, and at that time, the snake Medusa's suzerain strength wasn't something that she could contend with. At that time, Sheng Yin seemed to have seen a firework that could topple the world. Thousands of flames condensed in the air, and a bright red flash flashed. The suzerain snake Medusa was directly burned into a half-charred state. Finally, Gu Lang stored it in a Fae storage box. That was the first time Sheng Yin had been shocked by the strength of a peer. From then on, Zhong Zai could be said to have become Sheng Yin's idol. However, even with Sheng Yin's vision, she couldn't understand how he had such a strong flame resistance. Even if Zhong Zai hadn't exerted his strength, just the temperature emitted by the Diamond X/Fantasy 3 Reincarnation Flame Beast's flames was not easy to deal with. This flame could cause absolute instant death damage to Faes below Diamond/Fantasy breed. Even if Faes of the same grade as the Reincarnation Flame Beast were roasted by this flame, it was impossible for them to be unscathed. As a creation master, Sheng Yin could be sure that Lin Yuan was not a Fae and did not have a Fae bloodline. This was because Lin Yuan didn't have that kind of Fae's aura at all, nor did he have a beast pattern. It could be said that Lin Yuan was a pure human spirit chi professional, which proved that the strength he was displaying now was all provided by his contracted Fae. It should be one of Lin Yuan's Faes that bestowed him with fire resistance and that shocking strength. Sheng Yin couldn't see too much at once from the collision just now. At that moment, Sheng Yin heard her little sister's voice again. Big sister Sheng Yin, I announce that Lin Yuan will be my darling from now on. Lin Yuan's action of turning over in the air and landing on the ground just now was too cool. Upon hearing that, Sheng Yin's pupils shrank, and she finally realized what was wrong. Lin Yuan's strong flame resistance and monstrous strength could be said to be provided by phase. However, Lin Yuan's combat skills and movement techniques were definitely his own. Could it be that this young Lin Yuan was also a martial arts prodigy? In the era of the Spirit Qi awakening, it was a very stupid thing to spend time honing combat skills and movement techniques. The veteran factions and the top faction's younger generation outside the arena exclaimed one after another, but it didn't affect Lin Yuan and Zhong Zhe, who were standing on the arena at that moment. Although Zhong Zhe would be affected by misfortune during combat and become a battle maniac, it didn't mean that he was irrational. On the contrary, Zhong Zhe's spirit would be highly concentrated during combat, and his mind would become more flexible. When Zhong Zhe launched an attack on Lin Yuan, he knew that Lin Yuan would definitely be able to withstand it. However, he didn't expect Lin Yuan to withstand it in this way and even counterattack. Zhong Zhe liked the feeling of standing next to Lin Yuan and the faint fragrance on his body. Coupled with Zhong Zhe's love for combat, Zhong Zhe felt that it was simply a kind of immortal enjoyment to be able to duel with Lin Yuan. At the same time, Zhong Zhe also became 120% serious and looked at Lin Yuan. Since you said that this kind of flame strength is still far from enough, then the fire is going to heat up soon. The first time was even more intense. End of this chapter. Chapter 874. After saying that, Zhong Zhe ordered the squeaking orange mouse on his shoulder. Sky burning roar, use flame conduction. After saying that, the little orange mouse's body suddenly ignited with a fiery light, and 2 orange flame marks appeared on top of the little orange mouse's head. One appeared on the reincarnation flame beast, which was struggling to get up after being knocked down by Lin Yuan. In an instant, the temperature on the arena rose, and even Lin Yuan suddenly felt the pressure of this temperature. Sweat immediately seeped out of Lin Yuan's body. However, it was not that Lin Yuan could not endure such heat, and he was not the slightest bit afraid or worried about the sudden increase in heat. Lin Yuan did not use the Princess Silk Dress's function to activate the Myth 3 Ice Flame Law engraved in it and the Gilded Flame Dragon Lyce's Burning Flame Law. Lin Yuan's current fire-type resistance was only a passive bonus of the Princess Silk Dress. After using true data to check the attributes of the Sky Burning Roar and the Reincarnation Flame Beast, Lin Yuan decided not to activate the fire-type law engraved in the Princess Silk Dress to increase his fire-type resistance. Due to the Reincarnation Flame Beast, he and Zhong Zhe were destined to have a protracted battle. Fortunately, Lin Yuan was now a B-rank Spirit Qi professional. If he was still a C-rank Spirit Qi professional, he would be 1 rank lower than Zhong Zhe. Then, Lin Yuan could only use his ultimate move in this battle. In Lin Yuan's opinion, this battle was also a test of his strength. Not only had he not trained many of his trump cards, but he had not even used them. As a result, Lin Yuan did not have a clear understanding of the strength of his trump cards. This was not a good thing for a Spirit Qi professional. Zhong Zhe's Reincarnation Flame Beast had evolved from the Source Fire, which was similar to his contracted Source Sand. They were both elemental Source-type life forms. However, according to true data, the preconditions for the Source Fire and Source Sand's contracts were very different. The Source Fire had devoured a large number of metal spiritual ingredients and relied on the liquid metal to form a viscous lava-like body. The huge tiger-shaped Fey that had just formed from the lava-like body was the ability of the Reincarnation Flame Beast after it used Beast-type attachment and activated the Tiger-type Fey bloodline in its body. At that moment, the giant lava tiger, whose fire-type ability had increased, roared and charged at Lin Yuan again. Just like how Zhong Zhe had not unleashed his full strength, Lin Yuan's earlier punch was just a probing attack. The exclusive skill, Spirit Purity Burst, was to gather Spirit Qi at one point to burst out with damage. The purer the Spirit Qi was, the higher the Spirit Purity Burst damage would be. The Spirit Qi in Lin Yuan's body had reached a certain purity. This time, Lin Yuan wasn't stingy with his spiritual power. He circulated a large amount of spiritual power and gathered it on his left fist. Lin Yuan's body reflexively reacted, and his nimble movement technique coupled with tricky angles allowed him to dodge the giant lava tiger's flaming attack. Lin had. And the Lin Yuan flame giant flame tear. Lin Yuan's merciless blow completely destroyed the lava giant tiger's form. The powerful explosive force penetrated the lava giant tiger's body and blasted a hole with squirming liquid lava. At that moment, the giant lava tiger roared furiously. A lava antelope with a sword's horn came out of the hole and charged at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan's right fist seemed to have predicted the future. It had long gathered spiritual power and struck the lava antelope's horn. The reincarnation flame beast's lava antelope was blasted away. The deformed giant lava tiger and lava antelope split again and formed a lava cheetah. Lin Yuan knew that this was the result of the reincarnation flame beast's beast-type attachment and the exclusive skill, flame differentiation. With flame differentiation, as long as the reincarnation flame beast had enough beast-type Fey bloodline, it could continuously offset the damage. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and let his muscles relax. Immediately, he tensed up and leaped high into the air, waving his fist to attack. Lu Jia, who was very familiar with Lin Yuan, could not help but swallow his saliva. He did not expect Lin Yuan, who was usually sunny, to be so fierce when fighting in this way. Zhongzhe paid great attention to Lin Yuan's attack. Although the reincarnation flame beast could offset the damage with its exclusive skill, flame differentiation, Zhongzhe could feel the damage from Lin Yuan's punch. However, Zhongzhe could feel the damage from Lin Yuan's punch. However, even if Zhongzhe commanded the reincarnated flame beast's giant lava tiger, lava antelope, and lava cheetah to dodge his fists, the reincarnated flame beast's giant lava tiger, lava antelope, and lava cheetah Lin Yuan would still use his nimble movement technique to chase after them and attack them. As for the giant lava tiger, lava antelope, and lava cheetah, Lin Yuan easily dodged them with his movement technique. Lin Yuan was not affected by the scorching flames, and the reincarnation flame beast's beast-type individual could not cause an effective physical attack on him. This gave Zhongzhe a headache. Lin Yuan was like a slippery catfish. A series of exchanges happened in the blink of an eye. When Lin Yuan punched a lava rhinoceros, it turned into an irregular lava body and did not split into a new individual. Lin Yuan smiled brightly and said, "It seems like your reincarnation flame beast has absorbed a total of 8 beast-type phase bloodlines. It seems that your reincarnation flame beast has absorbed a total of 8 types of beast-type phase bloodlines." While speaking, Lin Yuan's attacks were still very clean. During the battle, he landed a punch on each of the giant lava beasts. The 8 irregular lava bodies fell on the combat arena's ground and rolled, but they could not condense into a beast form. They were obviously seriously injured. Lin Yuan's spiritual power had also been depleted during the earlier fight. It could be said that Lin Yuan's spiritual power had dried up. Not only did Lin Yuan's punches land on the reincarnated flame beast's body, but they also seemed to hit the hearts of the top and veteran faction's younger generation in Yeyang Palace's outer palace. At this moment, the noisy outer palace of Yeyang Palace was dead silent. Everyone looked at Lin Yuan as if they were looking at an indescribable miracle. Zhongzhe looked at Lin Yuan's grave and stern face with a hint of a smile amidst the fanaticism. He was not worried about the reincarnation flame beast's injuries at all. Each of your punches will consume about 1/20th of a B-rank spirit chi professional's spirit chi. You have a total of 21 punches, so your body should be out of spirit chi now. Reincarnation flame beast, use reincarnation fire. At that moment, the orange mark on the orange mouse on Zhongzhe's shoulder became brighter. The body of the reincarnated flame beast that had been marked with an orange mark also ignited with a thin layer of orange flame. There was still one more night, so it would be later. End of this chapter. Chapter 875. The moment the orange flames ignited, the lump of lava that couldn't take shape immediately transformed into a giant lava tiger. With a roar from the giant lava tiger, the other 7 lumps of lava shot toward the giant lava tiger and fused into its body. It was as though all of Lin Yuan's previous attacks had been useless. Lin Yuan swung his fist. He had been nurturing phase and had not had the chance to exercise. Now that he had punched out, he felt refreshed. Upon hearing Zhongzai's words, Lin Yuan replied softly, "You're right. According to the total amount of spirit qi, my body's spirit qi should have dried up after 21 punches." As Lin Yuan spoke, it was as though a seal had been opened on his body. Majestic spirit qi flowed out of Lin Yuan's body and set off a gust of wind on the stage. All of a sudden, Zhongzai felt his spirit qi circulation speed being suppressed. Zhongzai frowned and looked at Lin Yuan in disbelief. It's spiritual pressure. When spirit qi was stimulated, the spirit qi professional's body would produce external pressure. However, even a Class A spirit qi professional's spirit qi burst would not be able to produce spiritual pressure that could be felt by others. Right now, Zhongzai could clearly feel his spirit qi being suppressed. Zhongzai could not imagine how much spirit qi was circulating in Lin Yuan's body. Due to Zhou Ming's barrier, no one could sense Lin Yuan's spiritual pressure apart from Zhongzai, who was fighting Lin Yuan on the stage. However, Zhongzai's words were clearly heard by everyone present. Lin Yuan had considered the pros and cons before activating the spirit qi imprint in his body. Just the sacred source life form reward for winning the civil and martial arena was enough for Lin Yuan to activate the spirit qi imprint that he had not used for a long time. Moreover, the civil and martial arena reward was a radiant medal. Today, Lin Yuan was going to let go of everything and fight with all his might. Zhongzai felt the change in Lin Yuan's body and immediately gave the Reincarnation Flame Beast a new order. Reincarnation Flame Beast, use Beast Vein Fusion. Following Zhongzai's order, the Reincarnation Flame Beast that had just transformed into a giant lava tiger turned into an irregular lump of lava again. The magma ball wriggled rapidly, and as it wriggled, it grew larger and larger as the fire elemental energy burned. Finally, it condensed into a giant beast with the characteristics of 8 phase. The moment the giant beast condensed, it pounced straight at Lin Yuan. Since Lin Yuan had removed the spirit qi imprint, he had plenty of spirit qi to squander. This time, he didn't conserve it and gathered a massive amount of spirit qi on his fists. This caused his 2 arms to be vaguely wrapped in materialized spirit energy, and the wrapping of spirit energy caused the air around his fists to become distorted. However, just as Lin Yuan rushed toward the Reincarnation Flame Beast that had gathered 8 types of Fey bloodlines, he clearly felt the temperature of the Reincarnation Flame Beast's flames rising. If he still did not activate the princess's dress at this time, what awaited him would be a large area of burns on his body. Thus, when he rushed toward the Reincarnation Flame Beast, he quietly activated the princess's skirt. After Lin Yuan activated Princess Luo Kun, he felt as though he had returned to the feeling when he had just ascended to the combat arena. He couldn't even feel the heat in the surrounding air. This made Lin Yuan involuntarily sigh in his heart. As expected of the Myth 3 Law power. Just as Lin Yuan collided with the Reincarnation Flame Beast that had gathered 8 types of Fey bloodlines, he heard Zhongzai shout. Reincarnation Flame Beast, Flame Body Boil. Zhongzai had also contracted a sacred source life form, so when Lin Yuan activated Princess Luo Kun, he could faintly feel the sacred source aura emerging from Lin Yuan's body. Zhongzai wasn't surprised, as he had already guessed that Lin Yuan had contracted a sacred source life form. The fact that Lin Yuan had used a sacred source life form so quickly made Zhongzai feel at ease. Zhongzai would then use his Creation Master ability to investigate Lin Yuan's sacred source lifeform's functions. Following Zhongzai's command for Flame Body Boil, the Reincarnation Flame Beast's fire elemental energy suddenly spewed out, but Lin Yuan was still unaffected. However, the Reincarnation Flame Beast seemed to have turned into a hedgehog as it spewed out a large amount of tiny lava balls from its body. These tiny balls of lava cooled in the air, forming all kinds of weapons that were burning red hot. Seeing this, Lin Yuan jumped back and abruptly pulled away. Then, he used all kinds of strange movement techniques to move around in the rain of weapons, occasionally swinging his fists. In such a rain of weapons, Lin Yuan could be said to be unscathed. At that moment, Lin Yuan didn't notice anything strange. However, everyone, including Zhongzhe, saw a faint image of a woman appear on Lin Yuan's body. This woman's image was nearly 10 meters tall. The woman in the image had her eyes closed, and her skirt fluttered in the wind. She stretched her arms forward as if to hug Lin Yuan. The woman's image made a gesture of wholeheartedly protecting him. The appearance of this woman's image broke the temporary peace in Yeyang Palace's outer palace. This is definitely a fucking sacred source life form. Could it be that this sacred source life form allows Lin Yuan to be unscathed in this rain of weapons? After a series of exclamations, the younger generation spectators in Yeyang Palace's outer palace began to discuss among themselves. Gu Lang and Sheng Yin were deep in thought. Both of them realized that they couldn't rely on their creation master's strength to investigate the sacred source life form's abilities. All prying eyes seemed to be blocked by the thousands of strong and weak forces on the sacred source life form's body. The sacred source life form's aura could not be blocked by Zhou Ming's barrier. Gu Lang could confirm that Lin Yuan's body definitely had the sacred source life form's aura that had just appeared. However, Lin Yuan's fire elemental resistance and exquisite movement techniques had already been displayed. He didn't just summon the sacred source life form. Unlike Gu Lang, who was deep in thought outside the battlefield, Zhongzhe, who was inside the battlefield, had already seen Lin Yuan dodge the rain of weapons. Then, he summoned a fairy source-type life form with azure blue flames on its body. The moment the fairy source-type life form appeared, the azure flames around the fairy suddenly retracted. Finally, it gathered in the gem on the fairy's forehead. At the same time, the reincarnation flame beast used the reincarnation ritual and activated its second exclusive skill, Lava Demon God, that had been sealed. The reincarnated flame beast seemed to have turned into a volcanic crater, continuously spewing out lava. Strange beastly shadows appeared from the lava from time to time, and they continuously bombarded Lin Yuan's half of the stage. While the reincarnation flame beast executed its exclusive skill, Lava Demon God, to attack indiscriminately, the azure blue gem on the little fairy's forehead that Zhongzhe had just summoned suddenly shot a gorgeous ray at Zhongzhe. It didn't give Lin Yuan any time to dodge, and he couldn't dodge in the rain. But the next scene made Zhongzhe's jaw drop. Lin Yuan, who had been hit by all the moves, was unharmed, but the fairy source-type life form, the blue venom flame puppet, that he had just summoned, was severely injured after launching its attack. Its spirited blue eyes lost their luster, and the two pairs of wings on its back stopped flapping. It fell from the sky onto the dark crystal floor of the stage. The third time. End of this chapter. Chapter 876. Zhongzhe was stunned for a moment when he saw the blue poison flame puppet's blue eyes lose their luster and the two pairs of wings on its back no longer flapping. Then, his pupils constricted as he looked at Lin Yuan. The fairy source-type life form, the blue poison flame puppet, could be said to be a special offense-type source-type life form that Zhongzhe had always valued. The azure blue flames on the blue poison flame puppet's body contained an extremely large amount of fire poison. The fire poison could immediately fill the target's cells with fire elements and evaporate the water in the cells, causing the target to be in a dehydrated state. The fierce fire poison would burn the dehydrated target into charcoal. At the same time, the blue poison flame puppet was also very good at spiritual attacks. What the blue poison flame puppet had shot through the gemstone in its forehead was its spiritual power attack ability, the Blue Rose Ray. However, after the Blue Rose Ray hit Lin Yuan, the blue poison flame puppet had suffered a backlash from releasing the Blue Rose Ray, and its spiritual power had been severely injured. This was why the blue poison flame puppet had immediately entered a near-death state after releasing an attack. A spiritual backlash would only occur when an individual with weaker spiritual power attacked an individual with stronger spiritual power. Zhongzhe's fairy source-type blue poison flame puppet might only be Diamond 8/Fantasy 2, and its grade and quality were not as high as the reincarnated flame beast. However, as a fire and spiritual type fairy source-type life form, the blue poison flame puppet's spiritual power was more than 3 times that of the reincarnated flame beast. By relying on its spiritual power, the blue poison flame puppet could easily severely injure the reincarnated flame beast. In order to have such a strong backlash, Lin Yuan's spiritual power had to be at least 5 times higher than the blue poison flame puppet. However, in Zhong Zai's opinion, as a spirit qi professional, Lin Yuan's spiritual power could not be so strong. If Lin Yuan had such a strong spiritual power, he could contract hundreds or thousands of fays and nurture them. In that case, Lin Yuan only needed to summon all his contracted fays during the battle. Who could beat him if they ganged up on him? Such a huge spiritual power had already violated the upper limit of the human genetic model's spiritual power talent. At the same time, the moment the fairy source-type blue poison flame puppet attacked, its spiritual power would connect with Lin Yuan's spiritual power as the blue rose ray hit him. The moment it connected with Lin Yuan's spiritual power, the blue poison flame puppet entered an unprecedented state of fear. It was as if the blue poison flame puppet, as a subordinate, had unknowingly offended its superior. Zhong Zai's contracted blue poison flame puppet was in existence with an extremely noble bloodline among fairy source-type life forms. From the moment it hatched, it had 2 pairs of wings on its back, which meant it had 4 wings on its back. Apart from the rumored myth breed that had grown a 3rd pair of wings, the blue venom flame puppet's bloodline could be said to be the pinnacle of fairy source-type life forms. Even Zhong Zai's own master, Chef Supreme, had said that if the blue venom flame puppet continued to be nurtured, there was a high chance that it would grow a 3rd pair of wings. Fairy source-type life forms were a kind of rather special life form. When facing dragon species pressure and phoenix species pressure that came from phase bloodlines, they had a very strong resistance. In fact, it could basically ignore the phase bloodline pressure. However, when it came to the fairy bloodline, the fairy source-type life forms with a high bloodline had a strong control over the fairy source-type life forms with a low bloodline. In the previous battles, Zhong Zai had many advantages in this aspect. Zhong Zai secretly guessed in his heart, could Lin Yuan have a fairy source-type life form with 3 pairs of wings? After having this thought, Zhong Zai felt that it was rather nonsensical. Lin Yuan was now a B-rank spirit qi professional. Even if his contracted phase upper limit was the same as Zhong Zai's, it would at most be a Diamond X/Fantasy V Fei. In history, he had never heard of a fairy source-type life form below myth breed being able to grow 3 pairs of wings. Zhong Zai's master, Chef Supreme, had done a lot of research on fairy source-type life forms, so Zhong Zai knew the importance of a fairy source-type life form's bloodline more than anyone else. If Lin Yuan really had a fairy source-type life form with 3 pairs of wings below myth breed, its value would be even more precious than an uncontracted sacred source life form. Not only that, but Zhong Zai could also determine that Lin Yuan had a very strong resistance to poison based on how unscathed he was. Fire poison damage was completely different from fire damage. One was poison damage that evolved from fire elements, while the other was pure fire damage. Ever since Zhong Zai had become a combat class spirit qi professional, he had never felt so depressed in a duel. As a spirit qi professional with an affinity for fire, Zhong Zai's contracted phase were all fire-type phase due to the limitations of his talent. After his specialty, fire-type attacks, was restricted, Zhong Zai changed his attack method and suffered a greater loss. After Zhong Zai probed Lin Yuan's sacred source life form, he realized that his life as a creation master seemed to have been in vain. This was not the first time Zhong Zai had tried to spy on someone else's sacred source life form. He had even been able to get a glimpse of his Chef Supreme's sacred source life form. However, Lin Yuan's sacred source life form had been blocked by thousands of strong and weak energies, so he could not even get a glimpse of it. Zhong Zai secretly guessed that Lin Yuan's resistance to spiritual damage was very likely due to his sacred source life form's ability. Unlike Zhong Zai's grave expression, Lin Yuan had a strange expression as he looked at the blue poison flame puppet that was on the verge of death. Zhong Zai's attack just now had not been the slightest problem. The combination of moves had reached a near-perfect level. Even if Lin Yuan had extraordinary combat skills and movement techniques, he would still not be able to dodge it. The mistake was that Zhong Zai had used a spiritual attack on him. As a functional Fey, Genius did not have any combat abilities. However, it had massive spiritual energy that could memorize all the knowledge in the world. Such spiritual energy was not something that one or two spiritual type phase attacks could shake. Lin Yuan's spiritual energy and Genius spiritual energy were connected according to Genius spiritual expansion ability. The blue poison flame puppet's spiritual attack had only caused a small wave in Lin Yuan's spiritual sea. The waves did not roll far before they silently melted into the sea. Lin Yuan did not feel the fire poison damage from the blue poison flame puppet's blue rose ray. If he had known that the blue poison flame puppet's attack contained fire poison damage, Lin Yuan would definitely thank himself for upgrading his Myth 2 Vicious Poison Law to Myth 3. Zhongzai's sudden attack had allowed Lin Yuan to indirectly destroy one of Zhongzai's phase, which was definitely good news for Lin Yuan. First, even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 877. The younger generation of the veteran and peak forces were also stunned by this sudden turn of events. He did not understand why Zhongzai's fairy source-type life form would be so heavily injured. Seeing this scene, Gu Lang's expression became more and more solemn. Gu Lang took a deep look at Lin Yuan, but the more he looked, the more he felt that Lin Yuan was shrouded in layers of fog, making it impossible to see him clearly. The blue poison flame puppet was a fairy source-type life form that Zhongzai had contracted and nurtured in the past 2 years. Gu Lang had fought Zhongzai a few times and had suffered quite a bit at the hands of the blue poison flame puppet. Gu Lang's thorny problem had become Lin Yuan's method to restrain Zhongzai. Through this unforeseen event, Gu Lang also came to the same conclusion as Zhongzai. He felt that Lin Yuan's sacred source life form's function was related to spiritual energy protection. With a wave of his hand, Zhongzai recalled the dying blue venom flame puppet and the reincarnated flame beast into his spiritual space. At that moment, the blue venom flame puppet had entered a near-death state and could no longer fight. The lava demon god state's reincarnation flame beast was also immune to Lin Yuan's attacks. Allowing the reincarnated flame beast to maintain its lava demon god state would only waste the spiritual energy in Zhongzai's body. After recalling the blue poison flame puppet and the reincarnation flame beast back into the spiritual spatial zone, Zhongzai looked at Lin Yuan and said, "That's right. You are very strong. However, I am going to use my ultimate move." Zhongzai's tone did not become heavy because of the battle. Instead, it was filled with a sense of joy. This was something that even Zhongzai himself did not feel. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan replied with a bright smile. "Just like you, I'm going to use my ultimate move." As he spoke, he looked at the sky-burning centipede on Zhongzai's shoulder and could not help but feel a little regretful. Under true data, the burning sky centipede's platinum skill, Group Flame Heart Flame, was a skill that targeted the mind and soul. Standing on Zhongzai's shoulder, the sky-burning hoe did not join the battle. Instead, it cast a support skill, Flame Conduction, on the reincarnated flame beast. He speculated that this heaven-burning centipede should be one of Zhongzai's trump cards. If the burning sky centipede were to use the platinum skill group Flaming Heart Flame on him, it would be countered by Lin Huang's mental strength. No matter how strong the burning sky centipede was, he would be eliminated. This way, he could directly destroy one of Zhongzai's trump cards. With the lesson of the fairy source-type life form, the blue venom flame puppet, Zhongzai would probably not let the burning heaven centipede use the group Flame Heart Flame on him again. However, this was also good. This burning sky centipede's existence could let him deeply feel how powerful the young generation's pinnacle strength was. At that moment, Zhongzai turned around and said to Zhuiming, "Senior Zhuiming, the attack will be out of my control, so I'll have to trouble you." Zhuiming's expression became even more serious. "Lord Zhongzai, I will take good care of the situation in the arena. I will act immediately according to my judgment." The first half of Zhuiming's voice was normal, but in the second half, his voice changed. It had a hoarse and cold quality to it. Lin Yuan and Zhongzai didn't sense the change in Zhuiming's aura because of the barrier. However, the younger generation of the top factions and veteran factions outside the arena felt as if a new world was quietly born in Yiyang Palace's inner palace. This newly born world was filled with desolation, as if all living things in this world were about to decay and decay. When they looked at Zhuo Ming again, they realized that Zhuo Ming, who originally had a human appearance, had a thick layer of earthen yellow armor. Fine and sharp thorns grew out of the armor, and a long tail curled up to the top of Zhuo Ming's head appeared behind him. Just by looking at this thick and long tail, one could feel the terrifying power contained within. It was as if the power of the tail could shatter the desolation world that had quietly descended in Yiyang Palace's outer palace. Although Lin Yuan couldn't feel Zhuo Ming's aura, he noticed the changes on Zhuo Ming's body. Upon seeing Zhuo Ming's transformation, Lin Yuan immediately knew that Zhuo Ming had a fae that could possess him. Lin Yuan had seen spirit qi professionals with fays that could possess them before, and Xianing was one of them. Upon seeing Zhuo Ming's transformation, Lin Yuan let out a sigh of relief because he was about to use an unpredictable power. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard Zhong Zai give an order to the Burning Sky Centipede. Burning Sky Centipede, use the exclusive skill, Exceptional Flame 8 Refinements. Upon hearing Zhong Zai's order, the Burning Sky Centipede on Zhong Zai's shoulder suddenly leaped into the sky. With this leap, golden bristles grew on the Burning Sky Centipede's body that looked like an orange rat. After these golden bristles grew, they immediately ignited with 8 different colored flames. Immediately after, the 8 flames entered the Burning Sky Centipede's mouth as it sucked in all of a sudden. Immediately after, the 8 colored flames on the Burning Sky Centipede's body seemed to have fused together and turned into a magnificent glazed color. Immediately after, the Burning Sky Centipede opened its mouth and spat out a bundle of intertwined flames at Lin Yuan. At that moment, someone below the arena suddenly shouted, "Fuck, it's actually 8 kinds of high-grade exceptional flames. It's actually 8 kinds of high-grade exceptional flames." Even a suzerain fae wouldn't be able to withstand the damage from 8 kinds of high-grade exceptional flames. As Zhong Zai's opponent, Lin Yuan naturally saw what the 8 flames on the Burning Sky Centipede's back were. Facing the menacing flame attack, Lin Yuan planned to test his ethereal jellyfish's diamond ability, Spatial Shift. Lin Yuan did not summon the ethereal jellyfish. If he did, the ethereal jellyfish's chubby body would probably be roasted into jellyfish jerky by the arena's high temperature. Therefore, he relied on his body to casually execute spatial transference. However, the ethereal jellyfish was a Diamond X/Legend Fae and had yet to become a fantasy breed. In other words, the ethereal jellyfish's strength was only equivalent to a Platinum X/Fantasy I Fae. Even if the ethereal jellyfish's spatial shift had a strong protective effect against elemental damage, it could circle out the space that was purely filled with elemental energy within a certain range and transfer the space to another dimension. However, there was a limit to the elemental energy that the ethereal jellyfish's spatial shift could circle out. If there was too much elemental energy, the space would be broken. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not release the ethereal jellyfish's spatial shift once. Facing the Burning Sky Centipede's menacing attack formed by the fusion of 2 Class 8 exceptional flames, Lin Yuan waved his hand and released 30 spatial shifts. Anyway, Lin Yuan had stimulated the spirit qi imprint, and he had plenty of spiritual power in his body that could not be used up. Now, Lin Yuan perfectly interpreted what it meant to have spirit qi and be willful. Under everyone's gaze, Zhong Zai's 2 high-grade exceptional flames attack was like a fat pig thrown into the sea in front of Lin Yuan, immediately disappearing without a trace. The second one was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 878. Before everyone could be surprised, the heaven-burning centipede's next attack arrived in front of Lin Yuan. When Lin Yuan had checked the heaven-burning centipede's true data, he knew that its exclusive skill, 8 refinements of exceptional flame, was to use 8 different flames to combine and increase the damage 8 times. Therefore, Lin Yuan was already mentally prepared. The number of times Lin Yuan released the ethereal jellyfish's diamond spatial transfer kept multiplying. 30 times, 60 times, 120 times, 240 times, 480 times, 960 times, 1920 times, 3840 times. The heaven-burning centipede's 8 refinements of exceptional flame's 8 attacks were like flowers in a mirror and the moon in the water. Even Zhong Zai's expression turned sluggish, and he looked at Lin Yuan with eyes full of disbelief. The younger generation of the top factions and veteran factions outside the arena could no longer hold it in and shouted Lin Yuan's name. Lin Yuan was strong, and so was Zhongzhe. However, Zhongzhe's strength had always been traceable, and the phase abilities could also be seen clearly. However, Lin Yuan's series of actions had broken the original understanding of the younger generation. They did not expect that a battle could be fought like this. If Lin Yuan's current strength was given by phase, the younger generation of the top factions could not help but think in their hearts. If Lin Yuan summoned these phase, how powerful would they be? After all, when a spirit chi professional used an ability without summoning phase, the ability's effect would be greatly reduced. If Lin Yuan knew what the younger generation of the veteran factions and top factions were thinking, he would probably laugh awkwardly. If he had summoned Little Black, Genius, and the ethereal jellyfish, Little Black, Genius, and the ethereal jellyfish would have been turned into ashes by Zhongzhe's probing attack. The only reason he was able to persevere in the arena until now was because of the resistance provided by the Princess Robe's law. This resistance would not be added to Lin Yuan's phase through the contract. Although Lin Yuan's method of turning the 8 refinements of exceptional flames damage into nothingness looked a little shocking, only Lin Yuan knew the pain. Even if he activated the Spirit Chi imprint, the nearly 7,600 spatial transfers had basically exhausted the accumulated spiritual power in the Spirit Chi imprint. Lin Yuan did not have any excess spiritual power to waste. After a brief daze, Zhongzhe stretched out his palm and stretched forward. A scarlet color appeared on Zhongzhe's palm, and Lin Yuan immediately sensed the sacred source's aura. At that moment, Zhongzhe looked up and instructed the heaven-burning roar. Land of Fire Fantasy. As soon as the words Fire Fantasy Village were uttered, the sky-burning centipede let out a roar that resounded through the outer palace of the Night Palace. Balls of strange flames gushed out from the heaven-burning hose body. These strange flames turned into colorful bricks and tiles in the air. Between the bricks and tiles, it was as if the entire martial arena had been forged into a majestic city made of flames. Magnificent flame flowers swayed in the air in the city. Lin Yuan knew that each flame flower was a flame characteristic left behind after a strange flame had been absorbed. However, the Burning Sky Centipede's exclusive skill, Fire Fantasy Town, was filled with tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of fire characteristics. The characteristics of these flames intertwined together, forming the embryonic form of a world of flames. Lin Yuan, who was in the Fire Fantasy Town, still felt an indescribable heat and burning pain even after activating the Princess Dress's Cold Flame Law and the Gilded Flame Dragon Lyce's Burning Flame Law. Lin Yuan's skin ached under the roasting of the fire elements. Under the roasting of the fire element, Lin Yuan could feel his sweat exuding a strong smell of blood. At that moment, Zhongzhe was like a god in the world of flames. As they watched Lin Yuan's skin continuously ooze blood, everyone felt that Lin Yuan was going to stop here. On one hand, Lin Yuan was too young, and on the other hand, his sacred source life form had been activated. However, this sacred source life form could not protect Lin Yuan as dutifully as the arms that were hugging him. At that moment, everyone saw Lin Yuan reach forward, just like Zhongzhe. However, Lin Yuan did not spread his palm forward. Instead, he made a grasping motion. Everyone saw the woman's illusory figure behind Lin Yuan suddenly become solid, and the woman's closed eyes quietly opened. The moment the woman opened her eyes, the 10-meter-tall woman's phantom behind Lin Yuan disappeared. Immediately after, a slender sword appeared in Lin Yuan's hand. The sword's scabbard depicted the woman in a fluttering dress. The dress seemed to be nurturing a magical world. Looking at the long sword in Lin Yuan's hand, it wasn't just the outer palace that was stirred up. Even the outer palace was stirred up. At that moment, the calm voice was filled with interest and surprise. How exciting! This young fellow has exceeded this old man's expectations. The Moon Empress' eyes flickered, showing that her heart was not calm. As the Moon Empress sat on the throne, Cold Moon and Dark Moon behind her could not see her flickering eyes. Otherwise, they would immediately know that the Moon Empress' heart was in turmoil. Otherwise, her eyes would not have flickered at all. The experts in the inner palace who had contracted a sacred source life form could feel that Lin Yuan's sacred source aura had not changed. Even if the sacred source life form had changed, it was still a sacred source life form. However, the top factions and veteran leaders who had not contracted a sacred source life form were looking at Lin Yuan in shock. At the same time, they secretly cast glances at the Moon Empress. They did not understand how a 17-year-old youth like Lin Yuan could contract two sacred source life forms at the same time. Chef Supreme looked at the Moon Empress with surprise and said, "Moon Empress, you taught your disciple well." When the Moon Empress heard Chef Supreme's words, her expression immediately became strange. She glanced at Chef Supreme, feeling that he was targeting her. Apart from the usual question and answer session that happened once every 2 weeks, the Moon Empress could not remember what else she had taught Lin Yuan. Hence, although Chef Supreme's words were meant to be good, the Moon Empress felt that he was picking on her. Hence, although Chef Supreme's words were meant to be a compliment, the Moon Empress felt that he was picking on her. The Moon Empress looked at Lin Yuan, whose body was bleeding from the roasting, and said to Chef Supreme, "Not like you. Unlike you, all the disciples you've accepted are so worry-free." Chef Supreme's face lit up when he heard that. Chef Supreme thought back to what he had just said and did not feel that there was anything wrong with what he had said. Could it be that the Moon Empress was angry because Lin Yuan did not perform well? On the stage, Zhongzhe raised his hand high. The red color in his palm was like a burning torch in the center of a world of flames. The moment the crimson flame changed, Lin Yuan drew the sacred sword sealed in the scabbard. Third time. End of this chapter. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.